Chapter 773. For the state of thunder to turn into a will, it required a point to gather the scattered and blurry states. Xiaochen finally found this point. It was the supreme lightning talisman in the small world. Under Xiaochen's intentional carving, the originally blurry state of thunder slowly merged together. Its initial form was like a clump of mud, completely unrelated to the talisman. Furthermore, it shattered at the slightest provocation. If an impatient person tried to do this, he would probably give up after a while. Xiaochen did not feel anxious at all. At this moment, excitement and agitation filled his heart. He did not know how the Thunder King comprehended a will. However, Xiaochen was certain that the Thunder King would not recognize that talisman. That was a treasure left behind by the strongest immortal of the immortal epoch. Otherwise, Ao Jiao would not have called it divine lightning. The will of thunder that Xiaochen was about to comprehend was not only different from the Thunder King's will but also unique in the entire Kunlun realm. That supreme lightning talisman suddenly became extremely clear in Xiaochen's mind. With just one look, it was deeply imprinted in his mind, unforgettable. However, when Xiaochen wanted to merge the state of thunder and form this lightning talisman, he encountered many difficulties. The power of states was formless and formless. First, he had to pile up the formless things. This was not easy. It was like piling up a pile of loose sand into something solid. How could that be easy? After a few tests, the state of thunder that he gathered was like a pile of ugly mud. Even the moment he let go, it immediately turned into a pile of loose sand. Fantasy was wonderful, but reality was harsh. This was the situation that Xiaochen was currently in. Sometimes, when one thought about many things, one would get half-dead excited, hot-blooded. One would think that it would be perfect, something that no one had ever done before or after, shocking everyone. However, when one tried to do it, one would discover that it was a mess. The perfect idea in one's heart could not be achieved at all. Damn it! I failed again. Even after thousands of attempts, Xiaochen still did not get any results. He started to feel frustrated. He opened his eyes and punched the golden lake. With a bang, a 3,000-meter-tall water pillar soared into the air. It shone with golden light like a precious sword, flickering with glorious light. This punch poured out all the anger and frustration that Xiaochen had accumulated from thousands of failures. Even the calmest person would not have a temper, and Xiaochen was no exception. The lake water crashed to the ground, rippling and bobbing up and down. After a while, it became calm again, looking like a smooth mirror of light. There was nothing in the world that could be as tolerant and gentle as water. No matter how high one stood, water would still flow downwards. Along the way, the dirt on the ground would be silently absorbed by the water. When one sank into a depression, only the water would remain calm. No matter what happened in the outside world, when everything calmed down, the water would return to its original state. Not a single drop of water would be unable to endure the loneliness and jump out on its own. If one placed a pile of sand in a lake, without external help, there would be a few uneven spots with uneven heights. As Xiaochen looked at the golden lake water below, his frustrated heart slowly calmed down. Then, he suppressed his earlier agitated emotions. He calmly analyzed what the root cause of his thousands of failures was. Closing his eyes and thinking hard, Xiaochen entered a state of selflessness, tossing all the empty excitement and hot-bloodedness out of his mind. After a long time, Xiaochen opened his eyes and looked at the calm surface of the lake again. A spirited light flashed in his eyes. Sand cannot be piled up into a solid state. Just the state of thunder alone cannot force it together. I need to add something else, like water. Sand was indeed not sturdy. However, if one mixed water and sand, it would not be a problem to build an indestructible castle. If the power of concepts was compared to sand, then what was water? Xiaochen muttered to himself. Some of the problems slowly became clear. What was the most abundant in the sea of consciousness? Naturally, it was the vast mental energy. Only by mixing mental energy and the state of thunder could one truly merge them together. Naturally, the state of thunder would be unbreakable, indestructible. After thinking of a way to resolve the problem, Xiaochen remained as calm as before. He immediately did as he was told. Excitement and joy could wait until after the matter was done. Xiaochen closed his eyes, and strands of scattered state energy gathered together once more, forming a clump of ugly mud. This mud looked like it would scatter at any moment. However, Xiaochen did not lose heart. He poured in strands of mental energy like water. Buzz! A soft buzzing sound rang out in Xiaochen's mind. The clump of mud that looked like it would scatter at any moment. As Xiaochen infused his mental energy, it slowly merged together, hugging each other tightly. Xiaochen revealed a faint smile. Indeed, his guess was right. The state of thunder was like sand, and mental energy was like clear water. Only by combining the two could one achieve true perfection. Continuing his efforts, Xiaochen continuously merged his peak state of thunder together. The clump of mud became even larger. At the same time, the mental energy in Xiaochen's sea of consciousness slowly seeped in. The two merged perfectly. When all the state of thunder had merged, Xiaochen's consciousness leaped up and took human form. Then, he entered the sea of consciousness and sat on the scarlet throne. Xiaochen stretched out his hand, and the purple mud containing mental energy and the state of thunder flew to him. Xiaochen stood up from the throne and recalled the appearance of the lightning talisman. Then, he started to slowly polish it. As Xiaochen polished the rough mud, it slowly became more exquisite. Slowly, a talisman appeared on it. At the very least, it looked like a talisman. No one would mistake it for a mud ball. Xiaochen did not understand or know how to draw the immortal scripts on the divine grade lightning talisman. However, he did not need to draw them. After all, he was not trying to make another divine grade lightning talisman. Firstly, he did not have the ability to do so. Secondly, he did not have the materials. He only wanted to use this opportunity to forge his own unique will of thunder. After some thought, Xiaochen knew what he should carve on the talisman. He wanted to carve the immortal attribute on it. This was the mental world. Xiaochen stretched out his hand, and a brush appeared out of nowhere. As Xiaochen moved, all sorts of startling mysterious phenomena appeared in the boundless world of the sea of consciousness. Volcanoes erupted, lightning flashed, thunder roared, seas roared, and snowy shores crumbled. The winds and clouds changed. There was no moment of peace. Only Xiaochen remained standing on the scarlet throne, his expression calm. No matter how horrifying the mysterious phenomena were, I will write immortal with every stroke. The immortal patterns on the purple talisman slowly linked together. As Xiaochen drew the final stroke, a divine charm appeared on the rough talisman. On the rough wrinkles, a trace of charm appeared out of thin air. The world of the sea of consciousness that had changed colors also stopped moving at this moment. In the world, only that talisman was eternal and immortal. Xiaochen withdrew his consciousness from the sea of consciousness and opened his eyes. A light flashed on his forehead, and the purple talisman flew out. At this moment, the state was still the state, and the mental energy was still the mental energy. The two only merged together. A will did not appear. It still lacked one last breath. Xiaochen's expression remained calm. He clenched his teeth and spat out a mouthful of lifeblood essence. Pu ci. When the blood seeped into the talisman, it immediately gave off a strange light. At this moment, Xiaochen's mind, flesh, and blood were completely connected to this talisman. They were bound together for good or for ill. The last thing that was missing from the will was completely fixed. It would be refined into the immortal will of thunder that belonged to Xiaochen, the one and only in the world. As the light flowed, it no longer showed any signs of dimming. As long as Xiaochen did not die, the light of his will would be eternal and inextinguishable. Still not enough. Xiaochen's eyes were resolute as he looked at the divine lightning talisman hidden in the small world encased in the clump of light. He stretched out his hand and pointed, and a finger-sized hole immediately appeared in the clump of light. Pu ci. The lightning that shot out brushed past Xiao Chen's shoulder. However, it struck the purple talisman flickering with light in the air. When the golden lightning struck the talisman, Xiao Chen immediately roared in pain. It was like the lightning struck him. He was in so much pain that he wished he were dead. If jade is not cut, it will not be useful. If the sword is not sharp, how can it kill? The newborn will of thunder had to undergo the baptism of the absolute divine lightning before it could truly become glorious. Despite the boundless pain, Xiao Chen's eyes did not show any intention of giving up. He stretched out his hand and pointed, and another hole appeared, releasing another bolt of golden lightning. Xiao Chen's figure flashed, and he attacked 81 times, allowing this newborn will of thunder talisman to undergo the baptism of the absolute divine lightning 91 times. At some point in time, Ao Jiao had emerged from the bottom of the lake. As she looked at the agonized Xiao Chen in the air, a complicated expression appeared in her eyes. The scene before her was very similar to the scene from many years ago. Even after 1,000 years, the scene did not change. The faces of the Thunder King and Xiao Chen kept changing before Ao Jiao's eyes. She focused her gaze, and her face froze. It was a young man with delicate features who could not be considered very handsome. The face that belonged to the Thunder Emperor never appeared again. Let the past legends and inextinguishable glory fade away in the long river of history. If one was determined and never gave up, one would definitely create an even more glorious legend. Back then, the Thunder King was like this as well. Although the will he comprehended was different from Xiao Chen's, the instant he comprehended his will, he immediately used the absolute divine lightning to baptize himself. A foolish person would have 10,000 ways to be foolish. However, a truly powerful demonic genius, be it 10,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, or now, was the same on a certain level. The baptism of the divine lightning would definitely not be effective in a short time. If one gave up after enduring the torment of pain, all their previous efforts would be wasted. It would be meaningless. As the light flickered, it lasted for 7 days. The somewhat crude talisman that belonged to Xiao Chen's will became even more exquisite and perfect under this baptism. After 7 days, no more absolute divine lightning shot out from the clump of light. The purple talisman glowed with light. Occasionally, one could see faint golden light flowing out of the immortal patterns. The edges were distinct, looking like a perfect work of art. Chapter 774. As the talisman spun around, a faint light spread out in all directions, forming a blurry clump of light. Unfortunately, before the radiance of the powerful divine lightning, this talisman, which could shock everyone in the outside world, seemed to pale in comparison. A state was formless, but a will had form. To turn a state into a will, most people would imitate a weapon that they were good at, be it a saber, a sword, or a spear. There were also outstanding talents, powerful demonic geniuses, and wondrous ideas. Some people were bold enough to imitate their will into a legendary ferocious beast, such as a phoenix, a true dragon, a qilin, a golden crow, or a kuanpeng. However, such holy beasts had a huge problem: they had vanished long ago during the martial epoch. Occasionally, there were rumors of them, but they were fleeting. It was hard to verify the veracity of them. Without seeing the real thing, no matter how outstanding one was and how talented one was, one's will would lack some charm. Xiao Chen was different. He did not know the grade of the talisman in the clump of light, but it was definitely at least a divine grade talisman. If he could subdue such a talisman, he could easily injure a true dragon. The master of this talisman should have been someone who stood at the peak of the immortal epoch. Who knew how many holy beasts, divine blood and all sorts of natural treasures were needed to make such a talisman? Even with the materials prepared, it would take several hundred years to make it. Xiao Chen used this talisman as the manifestation of his will. This was unprecedented in the martial epoch. Even people with higher cultivation than him could not block his sharpness. If the two clashed, Xiao Chen would definitely have the last laugh. Withdraw. Xiao Chen, who had rested for a long time, said softly as he looked at the talisman floating in the air. Then, the will talisman turned into a beam of light and entered Xiao Chen's forehead. The instant the talisman entered his sea of consciousness, Xiao Chen's aura suddenly changed. A formless might spread out without any need for him to circulate it. Right now, if a cultivator with a lower cultivation than Xiao Chen approached him, even if Xiao Chen did not do anything, they would feel mental pressure. Not to mention exchanging glances with Xiao Chen. With just one look, they would feel fear and fear. This was the might of a will. Back then, in the Dragon Burial Mound, the Thunder and Lightning Palaces and Juanshi's will of thunder shocked everyone. Whether it was intentional or not, as long as they were within the range of Juanshi's will, they would be affected, stunned for a moment. It was hard to imagine how the 5 fiend cultivators, especially Juanshi's enemies, felt at that. If they knew that Juanshi had comprehended a will, no one else would dare to compete with him for the dragon bones. Ha! Xiao Chen, congratulations. Back then, the Thunder Emperor was the youngest genius to comprehend a will in the past 10,000 years. He was already 25. You are 22. And already, you. Now, you, I, spirit. I, fiend, I. Ao Jiao slowly floated down, feeling happy for Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen said calmly, now is a once in 10,000 years age of geniuses. The peak of the martial epoch will arrive again. There will be countless demonic geniuses. The Kunlun realm is so vast. It is possible that no one has comprehended a will earlier. Ao Jiao smiled faintly and said, there is no need to be humble. Oh, right. What is the form of your will? I have never seen it before. I have also never heard of anyone who could make their will form into such a form. The form of the will was very crucial. To a large extent, it would determine the quality of the will, which would affect one's combat prowess. Normally, one's will would form a weapon that they cultivated. That way, it would be more offensive and would also increase the might of their martial techniques. Cultivators with stronger talent would form their will into a living thing, giving it spirituality. It might even form a new life, becoming their own incarnation. The demonic geniuses would set their goals even higher. Their boldness would be unparalleled, directly forming their will into a legendary divine beast. However, the difficulties and challenges they faced would also be greater. The Tianwu domain's 3 holy masters had a special advantage in this aspect. Their martial spirits were legendary divine beasts. Forming their will into a divine beast was much easier. However, aside from the Lost Dragon's Gate, there were only 3 holy masters in the world. After all, most cultivators' martial spirits were ordinary worldly items. Under normal circumstances, they only had the use of condensing and storing quintessence. The will that Xiao Chen formed was not a weapon or a spirit beast, much less a legendary divine beast. It was a talisman that no one had seen before. When Xiao Chen heard this, he felt it was strange. He asked, the Thunder King did not see the true appearance of that divine lightning back then. Ao Jiao shook her head and said, no. Back then, the Thunder King was just a martial sage. The small 1,000 realms were too far away. With his perception, he could only see thousands of dragon-shaped lightning bolts. He did not see the true divine lightning. This was not strange. Xiao Chen had relied on his spiritual sense and risked his life thousands of times before he saw the true appearance of the divine lightning. However, when he saw the true appearance of the divine lightning, it dispelled another of Xiao Chen's guesses. This divine lightning was not left behind by a martial god. Whether martial gods existed in the world was still a mystery. This divine lightning could not prove anything. After giving a simple explanation of why the talisman turned into this, Xiao Chen started to familiarize himself with the changes in his strength after comprehending a will. Ao Jiao smiled faintly and resumed her cultivation. This place would be of great help to her recovery. She could not waste any time. Then, Xiao Chen checked his heavenly sage laws. There were 100 heavenly sage laws. The number had not changed. However, due to his will, they had become thicker. From the thickness of a pinky finger, they had grown to the thickness of a thumb. The baptism of the divine lightning on his will seemed to affect his heavenly sage laws as well, making them even more resilient. As the heavenly sage laws danced, they felt very powerful. They even contained the might of a will. If Xiaochen ran into that Xian clan's senior elder again, he would be able to instantly crush the other party in terms of the strength of his heavenly sage laws, mercilessly shattering the other party's heavenly sage laws. In another 6 months, the appointed time with Bai Wuxue would arrive. With Xiaochen's talent, he would definitely not stop advancing. After thinking for a while, Xiaochen decided not to rush out. He would cultivate here for 3 months, strengthening his quintessence further and using the special environment of this place to stabilize his cultivation. At the same time, he would comprehend the movement technique, thunder steps, that he obtained from Mo Lingtian. The first time Xiaochen saw Mo Lingtian execute thunder steps' explosive increase in speed, he felt very interested. He felt that there were many things he could learn from it. Although there was only one move of the Kunpeng fist that the Heavenly Rock King left behind, Xiaochen still had to make some time to learn it. Furthermore, he had not purified that dark painting piece yet. Before he left, he had to make some time to purify it. As for when he would absorb it, that was another matter. 3 months might seem like a lot, but when he thought about it, he did not have much time to waste. However, Xiaochen did not know that the Silver Moon Spirit Fox race did not intend to let him off. As long as he left, he would face 3 bona fide inferior grade martial sages. The hazy white fog lingered all year round. In the past 10,000 years, no one had heard of anyone coming out of misleading Fog Lake. What was in the lake? Why did it cause people to get lost? The Forbidden Land, misleading Fog Lake, had always been filled with all sorts of mysteries in the vast and boundless fiend domain. Throughout history, there had been several sovereign martial emperors who wanted to explore it. However, after they delved 10 kilometers, they did not dare to advance any further. These sovereign martial emperors could clearly sense that the thing in the center of the lake already surpassed that of a sovereign martial emperor. It might be related to the legendary true god or a powerful expert from the previous epoch. This was not something they could take the risk to find out. At this moment, the 3 Xian clan senior elders led dozens of Xian clan half-sages on the shore, chatting listlessly. Although the first elder, Xian Feng, had given the mission of guarding this place for 3 months, everyone knew that this was just for show, to appease the clan head's anger. Even Emperor Wu could not come out of this misleading fog lake. How could an insignificant half-sage do so? If he really did come out, the entire fiend domain would be shaken. Ha! Xian Feng, you are really capable. You could not even catch an insignificant half-sage, causing us to sit here for 3 months. There were 3 Xian clan senior elders here. Aside from Xian Feng, who fought with Xiaochen earlier, there were also Xian Yi and Xian Shui. The one who spoke was Xian Shui, who had always been at odds with Xian Feng. The 10 half-sages behind all showed unhappy expressions. However, due to Xian Feng's status, they could not say anything. 40 half-sages and 3 martial sages. For the sake of killing Xiaochen, the Xian clan had put in a lot of effort. It looked like Xian Yu's death had truly angered the Xian clan's clan head. Such a force was equivalent to 1/3 of the Xian clan's strength. Unfortunately, Xiaochen hid in misleading Fog Lake, leaving this strong team with nowhere to go. They could only sit here and do nothing. However, they could not disobey orders and leave on their own. Xian Feng said angrily, "Xian Yi, what is the meaning of this? Earlier, you mocked me in front of the first elder. I already endured it. Yet, you still dare to mock me?" Xian Shui retorted, "Did I say anything wrong? If not for your strength being average, how could you give that brat the chance to enter misleading Fog Lake? Why would we waste 3 months? The fight with Xiaochen had already made Xian Feng extremely depressed in the first place. He no longer had a good temper. He shouted, "If you are capable, then charge in and bring out that brat's head." Seeing the two arguing intensifying, Xian Yi had no choice but to be the peacemaker. She said, "All right, stop arguing. The deadline will be up when the sun sets today. This brat will definitely die if he enters misleading Fog Lake. At least we can report to the clan head. Doyens, there seems to be some movement in there. Just at this moment, one of the Xian clan half-sages in the back suddenly said uncomfortably. Xian Feng and the other two stopped talking and looked in the direction the half-sage pointed. They saw a formless sword flying over the dense fog in the distance, splitting it in half like a canvas. This is... Xian Feng's expression froze. Suddenly, a bad feeling welled up in his heart. The fog in front parted automatically, and a figure that Xian Feng did not want to see the most appeared. He had delicate facial features, fluttering white clothes, long black hair, and a pair of deep and boundless eyes. Chapter 775. Xiao Chen's expression was as calm as ever, without any fluctuations. The 3 Xian clan senior elders and the 40 half-sages behind them were all stunned. Their eyes widened in disbelief at the scene before them. Xiao Chen, whom everyone thought was dead, actually walked out of misleading Fog Lake. Even Emperor Wu could not. Yet, an insignificant half-sage like him managed to walk out. Xiao Chen frowned slightly. When he saw the lineup at the shore, he was startled as well. 3 martial sages and 40 half-sages. Unexpectedly, the Xian clan mobilized so many people to wait for him for 3 months. They are really extraordinarily patient. Xiao Chen's lips curled up in a strange smile. However, while the lineup looked large, the ones that Xiao Chen truly needed to pay attention to were the 3 Xian clan senior elders. The 40 half-sages all had varying strengths. Several of them had not even comprehended heavenly sage laws. Right now, Xiao Chen could easily crush such cultivators with a casual punch. No matter how many of them there were, it would be pointless. Whoosh! Xiao Chen gently pushed off the water, and a clump of electric light exploded out. A blue dragon seemed to soar up from the center of the electric light. In these 3 months, Xiao Chen had not only completely comprehended thunder steps, but he had also creatively merged it with his azure dragon cloud soaring art. Now, Xiao Chen's speed was more than twice as fast as before he entered misleading Fog Lake. To everyone's eyes, Xiao Chen seemed to teleport, traversing a kilometer and arriving at the shore. Xiao Chen raised his eyes and looked around. The 40 half-sages immediately felt a strange pressure invading their minds, forcing them to take a step back unconsciously. Fear spread in their hearts as they looked at Xiao Chen, trembling slightly. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and looked at Xian Feng. "Old man, you have not left yet. That punch on your chest should no longer hurt, right?" Xiao Chen did not show any fear before the 3 martial sages, casually mocking Xian Feng. "It's good that you came out. Today, I will definitely kill you with my own hands." The flame of hatred in Xian Feng's eyes erupted like a volcano. Xiao Chen's words ignited it, and more than 100 heavenly sage laws instantly poured into his hand. It formed a huge might and pressure as it charged at Xiao Chen with its full power. 99 ice-roaming dragons danced around Xiao Chen's body. Before Xiao Chen arrived, an icy aura surged towards Xiao Chen like an ocean. With his previous experience, Xian Feng did not plan to hold back the moment he started. He directly used his trump card. Xian Shui and Xian Yi frowned slightly when they saw this scene. They exchanged glances with each other and saw the confusion in each other's eyes. Wasn't it just a half-saint? Even if he was a monstrous genius, there was no need for him to use his trump card at the beginning of the battle. It was like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows and watched Xian Feng fly over like a gushing river. A vigorous fighting spirit blazed in his eyes. After comprehending a will and cultivating bitterly for 3 months, Xiao Chen's strength had increased explosively. He could use this group of people as practice. The 100 thick purple heavenly sage laws in Xiao Chen's body merged like 100 tributaries and poured into his right fist. Kuan Peng Fist. Xiao Chen roared ferociously. Suddenly, a strong wind blew behind him. A boundless aura followed the strong wind and surged forward. In an instant, that vast tsunami-like cold chi was completely washed away. The Kunpeng was a legendary immortal beast. It was thousands of kilometers long and wide. Its wings could cover the sky, allowing it to fly 5,000 kilometers in one breath. As the saying went, when the Kunpeng spread its wings and soared into the clouds, it hated that the sky was too low for it to fly. A huge shadow suddenly cast down, and the curtain of night suddenly fell. Everyone looked up in shock. At some point in time, an incredibly huge divine bird had appeared in the sky behind Xiaochen. The huge shadow came from this bird. A vast and boundless state instantly spread in everyone's hearts. The instant the Kunpeng spread its wings in the sky, Xiaochen gently leaped up as well. At the same time, he leaped up and clashed with Xian Feng's trump card. Bang! A surging force burst forth from Xiaochen's fist. Bang! 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 Explosions resounded without end as the ice dragons around Xian Feng's body exploded. The ice dragons around Xian Feng shattered one by one and turned into vast cold chi spreading everywhere. Frost instantly covered the surrounding 1 kilometer. Every time an ice dragon was destroyed, the color on Xian Feng's face became a little weaker. In terms of strength, Xiaochen did not even need to use deities descending to firmly suppress Xian Feng. The 99 ice dragons shattered in an instant. It was so fast that even Xian Shui and Xian Yi, who were behind, could not react. Scram! Xiaochen roared and took another step forward. The mark on his forehead flickered. The mark on his forehead flickered, and the light of his will spread out. The mark on his forehead flickered, and the 40-odd half-sages behind felt like thunder roared in their minds. They fell into a lightning-attributed illusion and cried out in horror. Xian Shui and Xian Yi, the 2 inferior-grade martial sages, felt their minds buzz, and they were momentarily at a loss. Xian Feng, who was in the lead, was in an even more sorry state. Extreme horror appeared on his pale face. As he watched Xiaochen press forward, he did not react at all. Bang! Xiaochen kicked the air and landed a kick on the Xian clan half-sage's chin. The bona fide inferior-grade martial sage's body flew up like a sandbag, crashing into several Xian clan half-sages trapped in the lightning illusion. The huge shadow slowly vanished. After all, the Kunpeng was not a true Kunpeng. It was just a mysterious phenomenon that Xiaochen created using his quintessence, heavenly sage laws, and will. Maintaining such a majestic and imposing mysterious phenomenon was not something an ordinary person could do. Even if a regular inferior-grade martial sage obtained the Kunpeng fist's martial technique, they would not comprehend a will. Even if they could forcefully create such a mysterious phenomenon, it would just be for show. These inferior-grade martial sages would not be able to bring out a mysterious phenomenon like what Xiaochen did, making them feel insignificant. The shadow vanished, and sunlight shone on the ground once again. The blazing sun's faint light shone on Xiaochen's pure white clothes. The wind continued to blow, and the hair on Xiaochen's forehead fluttered. His delicate facial features appeared before everyone's eyes. One punch, the full-powered strike of an inferior-grade martial sage. Xiaochen exploded his opponent with one punch. It looked like no one knew how much strength he had used. Xian Shui and Xian Yi felt their throats go dry. Their throats squirmed uncontrollably, and they appeared somewhat stunned. Rumble. The sound of Xian Feng falling to the ground was accompanied by miserable cries. This jolted the 2 out of their daze. They shouted, "Attack together! Quickly kill him!" The 40 half-sages of the Xian clan were people who had experienced many battles. No matter what, they were half-sages. After they struggled free from the illusions, they heard the senior elder's order and immediately attacked decisively. At the same time, they revealed their true forms and charged at Xiaochen. After the fiend race took human form, revealing their true forms exhausted a lot of quintessence. Unless they were forced into dire straits, they would not reveal their true forms. Now that they faced Xiaochen, who had comprehended a will, they would not be able to do anything without revealing their true forms. Shao Chen smiled faintly. Faced with 40 fiend race half-sages in their true forms, the previous him would have been forced to flee in a sorry state. However, so what if he revealed his true form now? Against Shao Chen, who comprehended the immortal will of thunder and had 100 thumb-thick heavenly sage laws, it was like an ant trying to shake a tree, a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Myriad heaven divine fist, chains of deities. Shao Chen used up all his energy, vital qi, and mental energy at the same time. He punched 3 times at the 40-odd spirit foxes in the air. Ka xie. Ka xie. Chains with divine scripts flowing on them appeared out of nowhere, looking like berserk dragons. The chains danced around chaotically, like a group of dragons fighting each other. The spirit foxes were easily bound, unable to move. More than 40 spirit foxes were bundled together, looking like a small hill. It was a frightening sight. The divine scripts flowed with light, and a fiery sealing power swept across the group of fiend race half-sages in their true forms. Miserable cries rang out. Shao Chen's gaze turned cold, not showing any mercy at all. He had killed Xian Yu. Now, he had established a grudge with the Xian clan. This grudge would not rest until he was dead. The Xian clan would not let him off. In that case, Shao Chen did not need to show mercy. He stretched out his hand, and a large net-like chain formed by the divine script half-sages slid out. Then, he caught one of the chains. Before Xian Shui and Xian Ye's shocked gazes, Shao Chen raised the divine script chain in his hand and tossed the Xian clan half-sages into the mound. Then, he used it as a weapon, smashing it at the two. Hu Qi. A whistling sound rang out, and Xian Shui and Xian Yi paled in fright as they quickly dodged. Shao Chen leaped into the air, an electric light burst out under his feet. His figure flickered as he swung the half-sages bound by the divine script chain, smashing them at the two. Xian Shui and Xian Yi dodged as they cursed. This fellow was actually so bold, using their clansmen as weapons. Clearly, the mountain of flesh flying over was very strong. Even the two of them did not dare to clash head-on. More importantly, these were their clansmen. The more they resisted, the more severely injured the Xian clan would be. This would have nothing to do with Shao Chen. Little bastard, stop right now. Stop right now, and we can give you a quick death. Shao Chen did not even know who had the upper hand, yet these two were still so stubborn. He could not be bothered with them. His figure flashed as he continued swinging the chains. Rumble. The bound half-sages continuously fell to the ground. Deep pits appeared, dust kicked up, and cracks appeared in the ground. This showed how heavy Shao Chen's attacks were. Bang! Shao Chen felt like he had hit a person. When he looked carefully, he could not help but smile. It turned out that Xian Feng, who had clashed head-on with Shao Chen and suffered a crushing defeat, wanted to take advantage of the chaos to flee. In the end, he got accidentally injured by Shao Chen, and the mountain-sized meatball smashed into his severely injured body. Xian Feng cried out in pain and vomited a mouthful of blood. Then, he fell to the ground and fainted. Shao Chen had not done this on purpose. He had crashed into the meatball himself. Suddenly, he felt his hand lighten. The quintessence of the Xian clan half-sages bound by the divine chain was drained, and they all recovered their human form. Shao Chen's lips curled up as he casually tossed them away like they were trash. Whoosh! Xian Shui and Xian Yi narrowed their eyes and focused their killing qi. They no longer held back and immediately charged over. The two inferior-grade martial sages worked together and executed their killing moves. A cold wind blew, and their auras turned cold. Chapter 776. The mark on Shao Chen's forehead flickered, and he leaped into the air, charging over without fear. Shao Chen's fists danced as he executed the myriad heaven divine fist. A sagely song resounded in the surroundings. Bang! Quintessence surged, and a strong wind howled. 3 figures flashed in the air, clashing with each other. The sound of their exchange resounded like thunder. Relying on the might of his will, Xiaochen did not fall into a disadvantage. In fact, he even held the upper hand, forcing Xianshui and Xuanye to retreat step by step. The light of the immortal will of thunder brought with it a mental pressure, making it difficult for them to even breathe. Purple light flickered behind Xiaochen, and electric light danced around. It was like he stood on a sea of lightning. The two states crumbled upon contact, they could not compete with him at all. Radiance of deities. Xiaochen shouted, and his fist glowed with a light like the sun. A vast pillar of light containing the immortal will of thunder charged over ferociously. The defensive martial techniques that Xuanye and Xianshui used earlier were scattered. Blood leaked out of the corners of their mouths as they were knocked back 5 kilometers. Xiaochen chased them closely. He completely released the light of his will. His long hair fluttered, and his white robes fluttered. He looked like an ancient immortal. After exchanging another 100 moves, the two's heavenly sage laws were not as resilient as Xiaochen's. They also did not comprehend a will. They could not bring out their advantage in experience. They kept retreating. The setting sun looked like blood. A strange scene appeared on the shore of misleading Fog Lake. A half-sage chased after 2 inferior-grade martial sages in a sorry state. Boom! The two no longer dared to hold back. They steeled themselves and revealed their true forms at the same time. Immediately, 2 20-meter-tall, 100-meter-long 3-tailed spirit foxes glowed red as they stared at Xiaochen ferociously. Xiaochen's expression sank. He stood in the air and stopped chasing. When they revealed their true forms, the two's offensive power would double. When they worked together, they would be quite strong. The 3 tails of the 2 spirit foxes stood straight, and their auras surged out. Under the pressure of their auras, dust particles slowly floated up. Roar! The 2 spirit foxes roared and leaped into the air. They charged at Xiaochen with all their might. Xian Yi and Xian Shui's aura was as heavy as a mountain, and the wind howled. After Xian Yi and Xian Shui revealed their true forms, their auras rose crazily, suppressing Xiaochen so much that he almost couldn't help but retreat. Finish this quickly. Xiaochen made up his mind, and the mark on his forehead released a dazzling light. It was the purple talisman representing the immortal will of thunder. With a poochie sound, he escaped. Purple lightning flickered incessantly as a boundless might burst forth, suppressing the auras of the two in an instant. Bang! Like a flickering meteor, the purple talisman emitted resplendent and immortal electric light. Profound Water and Profound Leaf were struck by the talisman one after another. Unsurprisingly, the two of them were blasted away without the slightest ability to resist. They landed in a faraway place. Dust flew up, and Xian Shui and Xian Yi reverted to their human forms. They vomited a large mouthful of blood as they looked at Xiaochen in the distance. Their eyes filled with horror. We have to inform the clan head. This fellow is a demonic genius. Now that he comprehended a will, we ordinary inferior-grade martial sages are no match for him. The two immediately turned around and fled, not daring to linger any longer. As Xiaochen watched the two leave, he shook his head and did not give chase. If he used his newly comprehended movement technique, he would definitely be able to catch up to them within an hour. However, this was the fiend domain after all. If he continued fighting, he might attract some fiend domain experts over, and there would be trouble. Xiaochen withdrew the talisman and landed on the ground. Then, he collected the spatial rings of the 40 half-sages and Xian Feng's spatial ring. Then, he quickly left this place. Before Xiaochen had time to look at the spatial rings of the 30 half-sages he obtained 3 months ago, he obtained another 40 half-sages spatial rings and even an inferior-grade martial sage's spatial ring. If Xiaochen sorted them out, he would definitely earn a vast fortune. Not long after Xiaochen left, a stout man landed on the shore of misleading Fog Lake. He wore tiger robes and had thick eyebrows and large eyes. His eyes were like lightning, shining brightly. More than 500 heavenly sage laws appeared behind him, each as thick as a baby's arm. As they moved, they gave off a berserk aura. 500 heavenly sage laws was already the maximum that an inferior grade martial sage could condense. Based on the thickness of this person's heavenly sage laws, it was clear that he had been stuck at peak inferior grade martial sage for many years. Otherwise, his heavenly sage laws would not have been so thick. The stout man looked at the naked corpses and tattered clothes on the ground. He frowned slightly and muttered, "It's the people of the Silver Moon Spirit Fox Race's Xian clan. Even after they revealed their true forms, they still ended up in such a sorry state." "Hey!" The stout man narrowed his eyes and noticed Xian Feng's body. He flew forward and observed him for a while before entering deep thought. Xian Feng's injuries were very severe, especially his internal injuries. His internal organs seemed to have been forcefully torn apart by a huge force. However, this was not the cause of Xian Feng's death. The cause of his death was a finger-sized bloody hole in his forehead. When the stout man saw Xian Feng's empty finger, a scene appeared in his mind. A man with a cold expression had taken away Xian Feng's spatial ring. Then, that man had casually pointed a finger and pierced through Xian Feng's forehead. The 40 half-sages had all died the same way. This showed that this person was indifferent and did not care about life or death. He was very decisive when it came to killing and snatching treasures. Why would someone who can easily suppress this group of Xian clan cultivators be interested in the treasures of some half-sages? The stout man looked at the nearby misleading fog lake and entered deep thought. He checked his surroundings but could not figure out what was going on, so he could only helplessly leave this place. After the stout man left, several figures with auras no weaker than his landed. All of them had sinister gazes, they all noticed the strangeness of the matter. Fortunately, Xiaoqin had not been greedy. Otherwise, if he had delayed the two Xian clan martial sages for a while longer, he might have ended up in trouble. As Xiaoqin advanced, electric light exploded under his feet, and the blue dragon soared up. In an instant, he crossed 5 kilometers. Furthermore, he had not even used his full power yet. If Xiaoqin traveled at full speed, not caring about his quintessence consumption, he could cross 10 kilometers in one breath. After traveling for 400 kilometers, Xiaoqin found a secluded place and stopped. He needed to sort out the spatial rings he had collected in the past few days. He had 70 half-sages spatial rings and 1 inferior grade martial sage's spatial ring. Together, they would be a huge sum. After going through the spatial rings of the 70 half-sages, Xiaoqin mainly looked at the astral coins. After all, it was impossible for these half-sages to have any powerful treasures. If they did, they would have used them long ago. The strength of each half-sage was different. Their wealth varied as well. With 70 half-sages, Xiaoqin had about 3 million astral coins. In an instant, this more than doubled Xiaoqian's wealth, reaching 5 million astral coins. Refining the breaking sage pill required many precious materials. It would be hard to avoid using large amounts of astral coins. Furthermore, there were the last 5 layers of the firmament body tempering art. Each layer required a powerful treasure, which was also a large sum of astral coins. Right now, Xiaoqin urgently needed astral coins. Furthermore, the more, the better. Finally, Xiaoqin checked the spatial ring on Xian Feng's hand. As an inferior grade martial sage, this fellow should not be as poor as the half-sage. Indeed, Xiaoqin found 1,500,000 astral coins in there. He placed all the astral coins in his universe ring, totaling 6,500,000 astral coins. If Xiaoqin sold the miscellaneous items of these people, he could obtain another 500,000 astral coins. Right now, Xiaoqian's wealth was equivalent to 7 million astral coins. After tidying up everything, Xiaoqin started to think about his earlier fight with the 3 martial sages. These 3 inferior grade martial sages had ordinary talent. They were at least 200 years old. However, they were still stuck at early stage inferior grade martial sage. Honestly speaking, Xiaoqin did not feel much of a sense of accomplishment when he defeated these people. Before Xiaoqin comprehended a will, he could already easily deal with Xian Feng. After comprehending a will, his strength increased explosively in all aspects. Furthermore, he could not defeat 3 inferior-grade martial sages who were about as strong as Xian Feng. That would be too much. Xiaochen wondered how the strength of the 7 giants of the Tianwu domain had changed. They were all demonic geniuses. Even if the 7 giants did not have any fortuitous encounters, they should not have stagnated. However, no matter how much Xiaochen improved, he dared to fight them fairly. Aside from Enjuanxi, he was 80% confident of defeating them. In the past, Bai Wushue's great icy palm imprint had reduced Xiaochen to a sorry state, forcing him to use his full power to block. Now that the 1-year promise was drawing near, it was time to give Bai Wushue a pleasant surprise. When Xiaochen thought of Bai Wushue's disdain for him in the past, a fierce flame blazed in his eyes. Collecting his thoughts, a magnificent clump of light appeared in Xiaochen's palm. That was the dark painting piece of the great rock spreading wings painting. However, at this moment, the dark aura was gone. Xiaochen did not feel any discomfort holding it in his palm. A spiritual light surged, making him feel very comfortable. The divine lightning had already purified the dark aura. If Xiaochen wanted to absorb it, he could do so now. However, Ao Jiao suggested that Xiaochen not absorb it for now. The core painting piece had been split into 2. Like before, there were only 3 choices. If he could merge the 2 pieces together, he would have 10 choices. If that Ing Qiong sensed that the core painting piece he obtained was not complete, he would definitely not be in a rush to absorb it. In the future, if Xiaochen ran into Ing Qiong, he might have a chance to merge the 2 pieces back into 1. Let's return to Hunluo City first. There are still some things that I have not dealt with there. Xiaochen put away the core painting piece and looked in the direction of the distant Hunluo province as he spoke calmly. Just as Xiaochen was about to set off, Ao Jiao said, "Xiaochen, do you feel that even though your strength has increased greatly recently, you have forgotten some of the purest things?" "What did I forget?" Xiaochen asked out of curiosity as he stopped walking. Ao Jiao replied with a serious expression, "You forgot your saber. You forgot that you are a bladesman. Ever since you started cultivating the myriad heaven divine fist, this tendency has become somewhat serious. The myriad heaven divine fist allowed your vast, dormant mental energy to be put to use. However, you are too engrossed in it. Now that you have comprehended the immortal will of thunder, you like to use strength to suppress your opponent. Have you ever thought about how you would deal with such a peerless monster if you were to encounter him? For example, Yan Shisan, Enjuanxi, or the son of the 3 holy masters. They have also comprehended a will, and their strength is no weaker than yours. Some are even stronger than yours." Chapter 777. What are you going to do? Are you going to use your strength to crush them? If you think that way, I'm afraid you'll be defeated in 1 round. Ao Jiao's cold words were like a cold water splashed on Xiaochen's body, causing him to feel a chill down his spine. Just a moment ago, he was still immersed in the joy of his huge harvest, but now, all of a sudden, he felt an indescribable fear in his heart. People needed to wake up by themselves, but how many people could truly wake up by themselves? Their strength and achievements increased crazily. Sometimes, you don't even notice it yourself, but you're already so engrossed in it that you think you're awake. Xiaochen frowned bitterly and stretched out his hand. The lunar shadow saber appeared in his right hand. He vaguely felt a sense of unfamiliarity. "Since you are a bladesman, why do you need to use these unorthodox methods of the god race?" Suddenly, Xiaochen recalled what Yan Shisan said to him. At that time, he did not think much of it, thinking that Yan Shisan misunderstood and underestimated him. Actually, the other party was feeling pity for Xiaochen. The onlooker sees more clearly than the person involved. If Xiaochen walked further down this path, no one would remember the white-robed bladesman of the past. Even if he could obtain a brief moment of glory, he would not be able to go far on the path of martial arts if he abandoned his foundation. After a long time, Xiaochen sighed and said with a serious expression, "Many thanks, Ao Jiao. My saber will never give up. I, Xiaochen, will always be a bladesman." Ao Jiao smiled faintly and didn't say anything else. Since ancient times, sages were all lonely. They either went crazy in loneliness or reached the peak in loneliness. She believed. She had always believed that Xiaochen was the latter. Rushing Thunder Saber Technique, Lingyun Saber Technique, Wukuei Saber Technique, Four Seasons Saber Technique, Lightning Tribulation Saber Technique, Dragon Subduing Slash. In merely 4 years in the Sky Dome realm, Xiaochen had practiced so many saber techniques. Aside from the Dragon Subduing Slash, he had practiced the other 5 saber techniques to great perfection. Xiaochen counted the saber techniques that he had learned in the past few years. Each saber technique represented a past event. Scenes of the past appeared in Xiaochen's mind. The Rushing Thunder Saber Technique, the promise of 10 years in Mo City. Using this saber technique, he defeated the young clan heads of the Zhang and Tang clans. Lingyun Saber Technique. In the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, Xiaochen had relied on this saber technique to defeat the core disciples of the other peaks in one fell swoop. Xiaochen took the top spot, fighting for Qingyun Peak and Lu Riyue's honor in front of everyone. Later on, when the Phoenix's Passion Palace's envoy arrived at the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, Mu Qingxue exposed his identity. The Wukuei Saber Technique allowed him to defeat the disciples of various noble clans. From then on, the title of White-Robed Bladesman spread like wildfire. Comprehending the 4 Season Saber Technique in one move made Xiaochen famous. During the 5 Nation Youth Competition, he used this saber technique to defeat the outstanding talents of the Sky Dome realm. His path was filled with glory, and his saber skills improved by leaps and bounds. However, after more than a year in the Kunlun realm, Xiaochen's cultivation of his saber skills showed signs of stagnating. The reason was not hard to explain. Although Xiaochen had joined the Haotian sect, he had never attended an elder's lecture. There were no masters proficient in the saber in the sect either, who were worthy of Xiaochen's admiration. At Xiaochen's current cultivation realm, he still had to rely on his own comprehension. Taking large strides forward would definitely be difficult. Secondly, out of all the saber techniques that Xiaochen grasped, only the Dragon Subduing Slash caught his attention. However, a saber technique at the level of the Dragon Subduing Slash was not like the saber techniques of the past, where he could comprehend it with just one look. Every move had its own deep meaning. Normally, comprehending one move would take a long time. There were even some mysteries that, without a fortuitous encounter, one would not be able to comprehend no matter how much time one spent. Furthermore, with the appearance of the myriad Heaven Divine Fist, Xiaochen unknowingly distanced himself from the Dragon Subduing Slash. When Xiaochen heard what Ao Jiao said, he found it somewhat inconceivable. How could he have forgotten his identity as a bladesman? However, when he thought about it carefully, everything made sense. Even without the myriad Heaven Divine Fist, if Xiaochen did not wake up to it, his identity as a bladesman would drift further and further away. Now that he had found the problem, the solution was not far away. After thinking for a long time, Xiaochen more or less figured out where the problem lay. Xiaochen had to systematically learn a saber technique that was compatible with his current cultivation realm. Furthermore, when he reached the martial sage realm, it would not be outdated. This saber technique could not be like the Dragon Subduing Slash, which could only be used as a killing move. It could be executed as easily as the 4 Season Saber Technique. Martial techniques had always been expensive. Without a large amount of astral coins, he would not be able to purchase a martial technique that suited Xiaochen's requirements. Even if he had money, he would not be able to buy it. However, Xiaochen already had a vague idea. There was no need to worry too much about how to obtain this saber technique. 10 days later, Hunluo Province's provincial capital, Hunluo City, appeared before Xiaochen's eyes once again. Tall, majestic city walls, cultivators moving in a hurry, cultivators exuding baleful auras, and chaotic battles were everywhere. Like before, this place had not changed at all. Fighting and killing were very normal in Hunluo City. It would be strange if there were no such things. Just as Xiaochen was about to enter the city, he squinted and exclaimed softly. He stopped and looked at a battle. One side wore the uniform of the Eternal Heavenly Sword School. There were more people there, about 50 or 60 of them. Most of them were early-stage superior-grade martial monarchs. The other side had only 2 people. Furthermore, with one look, it was clear that they were not local cultivators of Hunluo province. One of them brandished a halberd. As he walked, he exuded might. Every move he made was straightforward. No one could get within 5 steps of him. The other person used a saber. His saber techniques were exquisite and exquisite. As the saber light flickered, blood spurted out and miserable cries resounded. The Eternal Heavenly Sword School had the advantage in numbers. However, these 2 people firmly controlled the flow of the battle. In less than 2 hours, they would all be wiped out. The people of the Eternal Heavenly Sword School understood this as well. However, they did not scatter. Instead, they persistently held the 2 people back, not letting them leave. With one glance, Xiaoqin figured out what the other party was planning. The Eternal Heavenly Sword School was one of the 6 major sects of Hunluo province. Its branch in the city would definitely be significant. If things went wrong, there might even be a martial sage. Even if a martial sage did not come, just a few half-sages would come. Even a peak superior-grade martial monarch would not have a good ending. Xiaoqin smiled in disappointment and frustration. Unexpectedly, he could run into some old acquaintances here. These 2 people were none other than the Sky Dome Realms Bai Qi and Xianyuan Zhantian. Since they parted at Bushan Palace, Xiaoqin had not seen them for more than a year already. Naturally, Bai Qi and Xianyuan Zhantian, who were surrounded, were not fools. They knew what these Eternal Heavenly Sword School disciples were planning. They tried to charge out several times but failed every time. The longer this dragged on, the more grave their expressions became. If the Eternal Heavenly Sword School's half-sages arrived, it would be difficult for the 2 to leave. Just at this moment, thunder suddenly roared. A flickering electric light tore through the sky, dazzling everyone. The many Eternal Heavenly Sword School disciples could not help but feel a cold wind containing killing qi. When they looked back, a boundless saber qi immediately entered their eyes. The saber qi gave off a bright light. They seemed to see a blurry white figure behind it, holding a saber with one hand. A black wind blew, and his robes fluttered. Before the Eternal Heavenly Sword School disciples could react, the purple saber qi flew out like a rainbow piercing through the sun and chopped the Eternal Heavenly Sword School disciples in half. A scarlet light shot out, and the saber qi disappeared in a flash. The 10-odd cultivators in front of them all died in one strike. Quick, run! The remaining Eternal Heavenly Sword School disciples cried out in horror. They no longer dared to linger, fleeing for the city. The strong wind did not stop. Xiaoqin sheathed his saber and walked over to Bai Wuxue and Xianyuan Zhantian. Then, he smiled faintly. Xiaoqin. When Bai Qi and Xianyuan Zhantian saw that the person who attacked was Xiaoqin, they were stunned. Clearly, they had not expected to meet him here. At a table by the window of an inn in Hunluo City, Xiaoqin, Bai Qi, and Xianyuan Zhantian drank wine and chatted casually. From their conversation, Xiaoqin learned that Bai Qi and Xianyuan Zhantian had joined the same 9 ranks of the great families. They had done well in the past year, successfully becoming true inheritors. However, the competition in the Kunlun realm was much greater than in the Sky Dome realm. The glory of the past had faded away long ago, and they had to start all over again. This time, the 2 had come to Hunluo province for a sect mission, to hunt a desolate dragon. Who knew, after they killed the desolate dragon, they would run into an Eternal Heavenly Sword School disciple for some reason. Without saying anything, the other party demanded that the 2 hand over the desolate dragon's remains. The desolate dragon's remains were for the mission. Naturally, the 2 refused, so a conflict erupted between them. This resulted in the scene that Xiaoqin saw. The desolate dragon was a sub-dragon that contained the blood of a true dragon. In a situation where one could not find the remains of a true dragon, the desolate dragon's remains were a pretty good substitute. Ha! Think about the geniuses of our Sky Dome realm. After the 5-nation youth competition, they were all in high spirits, preparing to show off their skills in the Kunlun realm. Unfortunately, after more than a year, they are all unknown. Some of them even ended up in miserable states. Only you, Xiaochen, are still that absolute genius from back then. As a martial monarch, you dared to challenge one of the 7 giants, Bai Wuxue, and even obtained his acknowledgement. Now, very few people in the Tianwu domain do not know your name. Bai Qi sighed as he picked up his wine cup and took a sip. Back then, although Xiaochen was stronger than Bai Qi, it was not as if he could not catch up. However, in the Kunlun realm, their cultivations and reputations seemed to never be on the same level. When Xianyuan Zhantian spoke of the past, he also felt somewhat sad. This Eastern Sea's little dragon king, who once comprehended the state of kingship, was now like a true dragon trapped in the shallows. Before a large group of geniuses who were much stronger than him, his state of kingship became a joke, receiving many blows and mockery. For Xianyuan Zhantian to be able to make it this far without collapsing was because he still had a proud heart. He had not forgotten his past glory and his goal. However, he had no idea how long he could last. Very few people in the Kunlun realm dared to use the state of kingship as their foundation. The more flourishing the age, the more demonic geniuses there were, the harder this path would be. Xiaochen did not know what to say. He changed the topic and asked, "Are there any major changes in the Tianwu domain now?" There were still 2 months left before Xiaochen left the Tianwu domain. That would be 1 year away. In the past, 1 year might have passed in the blink of an eye. Chapter 778. However, in this age of geniuses, 1 year was sufficient to change the situation. The old and the new would replace each other. The two remained silent for a while. Then, Bai Qi said with some yearning, "The Tianwu domain has changed. The Tianwu domain has changed." Xiaochen thought about this a few times. Then, he took a sip of wine and asked seriously, "How did it change?" Of the 7 giants, Enjuanshi relied on the true dragon lightning whip to finally have a weapon to deal with the divine martial gate's holy son, Feng Wuji. The two fought for 3 days and 3 nights. Feng Wuji had the upper hand, but he could not do anything to Enjuanshi. He could only call it a draw. Bai Qi put down his wine cup and spoke in a calm and unhurried tone. However, what he said still startled Xiaochen, who was already prepared. For a long time, the holy sons and holy daughters seemed to be naturally superior in the Tianwu domain. No one would compare themselves to them. When ordinary people asked who the peak experts of the younger generation of the Tianwu domain were, the answer would definitely be the 7 giants. They purposely left out the 3 holy masters. Furthermore, they did not feel that there was anything wrong with that. The 3 holy masters transcended the world. The holy sons and holy daughters normally did not move around the Tianwu domain, so it was difficult to see them in person. To the younger generation of the Tianwu domain, the 3 holy masters were too distant. They were like living legends. The 7 giants were the experts that could be seen. If one wanted to make a name for themselves and challenge them, they would only be targets. No one would seek out the 3 holy masters. However, Enjuanshi had broken this legend, becoming the only person in the Tianwu domain to be as famous as the 3 holy masters in the past 10,000 years. Xianyuan Zhantian could not help saying, that battle was really intense. One comprehended the will of wind, and the other comprehended the will of thunder. Several of the inferior grade martial sages watching were so frightened that they turned pale. Enjuanshi is indeed incredible. The holy son, Feng Wuji, is clearly stronger than Enjuanshi. However, Feng Wuji cannot take him down and can only call it a truce. Xianyuan Zhantian's words were somewhat contradictory. However, they were easy to understand. If the other party was just slightly stronger, unless they fought to the death, there would be no way to determine a victor. However, even in a true life-and-death battle, the possibility of the two dying together was the highest. And Enjuanshi had to admit that this person was very strong. Now, there are 4 holy scions in the Tianwu domain. The thunder and lightning palace that Anjuanshi belongs to is slightly weaker than the Holy Lands. However, everyone acknowledges his strength, which clearly distinguishes him from the 7 giants. Bai Qi continued, moreover, the title of the 7 magnates is now only in name. Shao Chen raised his brows and asked curiously, what do you mean? Half a year ago, the top bladesman of the south, Feng Xingsheng, challenged Luo Zixiao, one of the 7 giants. With exquisite saber techniques and 80% comprehended saber intent, he defeated Luo Zixiao within 200 moves. The other of the 7 magnates, Jiang Ziyuan, was also defeated by a mysterious swordsman from the Heaven Sword World, Duan Yi, within 100 moves. Their undefeated record was broken, and they lost the title of the 7 magnates. The Shiman clan's Shiman Bao received some kind of stimulation. After he returned from the savage battlefield, he entered his clan's impassable purgatory to cultivate. He received the demonic training of the Shiman clan's martial emperor, becoming neither human nor ghost. After Shiman Bao came out, he directly challenged the passionate young master, Murong Lingfeng. Initially, no one thought highly of this profligate scion. However, he actually managed to fight to a draw with the passionate young master, even nearly defeating him. There is also the top genius of the battle realms, Niu Dang. He is even more shocking. He directly challenged the hot-tempered Wang Meng of the 7 giants and actually managed to fight to a draw. In the past year, several young experts have emerged, gaining a resounding reputation. The children of luck from the various realms have all matured. They are no weaker than the 7 giants of the past. Bai Qi said a lot in one breath. Aside from yearning, there was also a trace of desolation in his tone. In this age of geniuses, those lower realm experts had undergone a baptism of tempering and elimination. All those who could make a name for themselves had emerged. However, Bai Qi's name was not among them. Shao Chen entered deep thought. Based on what Bai Qi said, the Tianwu domain had indeed changed. Of the 7 giants, 1 advanced to the Holy Scion, 2 were defeated, and 2 fought to a draw. For the past 10-odd years, the 7 giants had dominated the Tianwu domain's younger generation. Now, they were completely disrupted. After a period of dormancy and accumulation, many children of karmic luck from the lower dimensions that were similar to him had finally emerged and revealed their extraordinary might. This was a grand age of geniuses that only appeared once every 10,000 years. The countless geniuses of the 3,000 great realms and the vast stage finally revealed the tip of the iceberg in the Kunlun realm's Tianwu domain. Whoever could stand out in the Tianwu domain would truly gain a ticket to this stage of geniuses, gaining the qualifications to compete for the throne of this age. Shao Chen thought for a while. Of the 7 giants, his first senior sister and the person he cared about the most, Bai Wuxue, did not mention anything. So, he could not help but ask. Speaking of Shui Lingling, Bai Qi smiled gently and said, "Who dares to challenge Shui Lingling? If she really gets angry, even the scions of the 3 holy masters would not dare to offend her. Her archery is publicly recognized as the best in the Tianwu domain. However, she is slightly weaker in close combat. If you keep a distance from her, you might end up riddled with holes." As for Bai Wuxue, at the mention of Bai Wuxue, a demonic genius with the same surname as him, Bai Qi paused for a moment. His expression turned somewhat grave as he said, "Shao Chen, it is not that I do not have confidence in you. It is just that I advise you to give up on your challenge with him. No one will laugh at you." Xianyuan Zhantian, who was at the side, revealed a similar expression. He felt that it was unfortunate for Shao Chen. Shao Chen's heart skipped a beat, but he did not refute. He smiled and said, "Just say what you have to say." Bai Qi gathered his emotions and said with some horror, after he left the savage battlefield, he disappeared. No one knows where he went. He only returned a month ago. A lower realm luck-bearer, who has been in the limelight recently, wanted to use him to make a name for himself. In the end, he froze that person into an ice pillar within 10 moves. With just a gentle touch, he shattered into ice shards on the ground, not even leaving a dregs behind. Xianyuan Zhantian said gravely, "This is not the most horrifying thing. There was news just half a month ago that he went to the bitter cold land of the Kunlun realm's extreme north. When he returned, he brought back a head. Xiaochen asked interestedly, "What head?" Xianyuan Zhantian whispered, "The head of a loose cultivator ranked 10th on the evil cultivator ranking. That loose cultivator roamed free for a long time. He was an inferior grade martial sage." Right after Xianyuan Zhantian spoke, Bai Qi and Xianyuan Zhantian both looked at Xiaochen with some sympathy. This news was very cruel to Xiaochen. However, the truth was the truth. Bai Wuxue killed an inferior grade martial sage. Furthermore, he was a notorious loose cultivator, not an ordinary person. Half a year ago, there might have been some people who thought highly of Xiaochen. However, after this news came out, practically no one paid attention to Xiaochen, who had not shown himself for a long time. Bai Wuxue even killed an inferior grade martial sage. What was the point of this challenge? No matter how hard Xiaochen worked, he would only become a laughing stock in the end. He would become a decent stepping stone on Bai Wuxue's path of cultivation. Aside from that, he was nothing. However, Bai Qi and Xianyuan Zhantian were thoroughly disappointed. The two of them did not see any fear on Xiaochen's face. In fact, there was not even a ripple in his expression. Bai Qi asked probingly, "Xiaochen, why are you not reacting at all?" Right now, many people are saying that he comprehended the will of ice. His strength is probably not much weaker than in Juanqi's. The head that he brought is the head of a martial sage. In the Kunlun realm, a martial sage is a bona fide major character. Xiaochen smiled bitterly to himself. What kind of reaction do I have? Not long ago, I defeated 3 inferior grade martial sages. However, a loose cultivator who advanced to martial sage would definitely be much stronger than the Xian clan's senior elders. However, Xiaochen fought 1 against 3 and was even stronger than Bai Wuxue. As for the specifics, the two of them would have to fight for themselves to know. However, Xiaochen was very confident in his will of thunder and did not fear Bai Wuxue's growth. Demonic geniuses often had their own fortuitous encounters. Bai Wuxue's accomplishments were not too shocking. Dong! 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 Just at this moment, chaotic footsteps rang out. A group of unwelcome guests came up the stairs. The 3 people in front all had strong auras and withdrawn killing intent. This was especially so for the person in the middle. When he looked around coldly, the other customers in the restaurant felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts. It was actually a martial sage. A heavy and oppressive atmosphere spread throughout the restaurant. The cultivators who were swept by this person's gaze quickly paid their bills and left, afraid that they would be implicated. When Bai Qi and Xianyuan Zhantian saw this group of people arrive, their complexions immediately paled. They said in a trembling voice, "The Eternal Heavenly Sword School's people are here. Brother Xiao, this matter has nothing to do with you. You should leave first. The 2 of us will meet up with you later." The 2 of them showed somewhat surprised expressions. They had not expected the Eternal Heavenly Sword School's people to arrive so quickly. Furthermore, they had not expected the other party to send out a martial sage for the sake of the 2 of them. If there were no martial sages, the 2 of them would not be a match for these 2 half-sages. However, they were confident that they could still leave. However, the arrival of a martial sage caused their confidence to plummet. They were probably going to die here. Furthermore, they had implicated Xiaochen. The martial sage leading the group revealed a cold smile. Disdain filled his face as he stood upright with his hands clasped behind his back. He said in a cold voice, "I was wondering which expert had arrived. He managed to kill 20-odd inner sect disciples of my Eternal Heavenly Sword School with a wave of his hand. It turns out that he is just a half-sage. No one is allowed to leave today. The sects behind you will not be able to save you in Hunluo province." The martial sage waved his hand, and the 2 half-sages beside him led the superior grade martial monarchs behind them to charge at Bai Qi and Xianyuan Zhantian without saying a word. Dong! 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 The group of people rushed over. Their heavy footsteps caused the floor to rumble. Their killing chi spread out and formed formless shockwaves. Many porcelain vases that were used to decorate the floors cracked, and the atmosphere instantly became extremely depressing. Bai Qi and Xianyuan Zhantian showed grave expressions. They stretched out their hands and grasped the weapons in their hands. Just as the battle was about to start, Shao Chen, who was seated at the table, looked at the two half-sages with strong auras. His lips curled up in a cold smile. Chapter 779. Shao Chen stretched out his hand and pushed forward. A vast and surging quintessence poured out from the thick heavenly sage laws. Then, he skillfully controlled the quintessence in the wine cup that he pushed forward. As the wine cup spun, the wine in the cup did not move at all. At first, the two half-sages did not care. However, after a while, their expressions changed drastically. The back of the spinning wine cup actually reflected thumb-thick heavenly sage laws. On a level that was hard to see with the naked eye, the wine cup guided a vast sea of lightning. It contained boundless energy, several times stronger than the two of them combined. Dodge! The two roared at the same time. They pushed off the ground and quickly shot upwards. In the blink of an eye, they were on the roof of the building. However, the group of superior-grade martial monarchs behind them did not have such good eyesight or reaction speed. Bang! Light exploded, and the first person the wine cup touched was instantly blasted into charcoal by the lightning. A roasted smell wafted out. After that, it was like a chain reaction. The 10-odd people behind screamed miserably. Before this overwhelming energy, they could not resist at all. Even ordinary half-sages could not block a casual strike from Shao Chen. How could mere superior-grade martial monarchs block it? When the electricity disappeared, the wine cup continued to spin. Shao Chen stretched out his hand, and the exquisite wine cup returned to his grasp. The wine in the cup heated up slightly, and its flavor increased. Shao Chen gently blew on the wine cup and drained it in one gulp. While the wine was heating up, 10-odd superior-grade martial monarchs, the inner sect disciples of the Eternal Heavenly Sword School, had been killed so easily. When Bai Qi and Xianyuan Zhantian saw this scene, their eyes went wide. They could not understand how Shao Chen had become so strong. The eyes of the two half-sages stuck to the roof were filled with horror. As they looked at Shao Chen, they quietly moved and carefully arrived behind the inferior-grade martial sage of the Eternal Heavenly Sword School. This Shao Chen was clearly not an ordinary half-sage. It was very likely that he was a demonic genius. Such a genius could not be measured with common sense. He could only place his hopes on the martial sacred. The expression of the middle-aged inferior-grade martial sage finally turned grave. He said, "This old man is Sun Liang, the person in charge of the Eternal Heavenly Sword School's Hunluo city. Might I ask for your esteemed name and why you attacked my sect's disciples? If you can give me a reasonable explanation, I can make the decision and let this matter pass." At this moment, he was in a difficult position. Even if he was confident that he could suppress Shao Chen, he didn't dare to act rashly. Such a powerful demonic genius would definitely have a super expert or faction protecting him. If a major character really made a move, the Eternal Heavenly Sword School would be in big trouble. However, he was not willing to just leave like that. The other party had casually killed so many of his Eternal Heavenly Sword School's people at the city gates. If he did not account for this, the Eternal Heavenly Sword School's reputation would suffer. Shao Chen put down his wine cup and stood up to look at this person. Then, he stepped forward and said calmly, "Coincidentally, I have something to ask you. If you answer me honestly, I can put aside some of my grudges with the Eternal Heavenly Sword School for now. Since you are the person in charge of this place, you should know why the Eternal Heavenly Sword School has been collecting dragon bones for so many years, right?" As they spoke, Shao Chen ignored Sun Liang's concession. Instead, he questioned the other party. Shao Chen's attitude stunned Bai Qi and Xianyuan Zhantian. The other party was a bona fide martial sage. What was Shao Chen trying to do? It would be fine as long as they both took a step back. How could he offend an inferior-grade martial sage? When Sun Liang heard this, he became enraged. His expression turned unsightly as he said coldly, "Every year, a few self-righteous demonic geniuses die. Do you know how they died? Self-righteous? If you think that I am self-righteous, then I'm afraid you will be disappointed." An electric light burst out under Xiao Chen's feet, and he instantly arrived before Sun Liang. Before everyone's astonished gazes, Xiao Chen threw a punch at this tyrant of Hunluo City. Electric light surged on his fist, and electric light flashed. It seemed like Xiao Chen could even crush a tall mountain in an instant. Sun Liang was startled. He had not expected Xiao Chen to really dare to make a move. By the time he reacted, he was shocked to discover that Xiao Chen had already arrived before him. Bang! In the time it took for a spark to fly, Sun Liang pushed off the ground and flew up. He did not want to receive Xiao Chen's punch unprepared. A hole appeared in the roof, and Xiao Chen's figure flashed as he leaped out of the inn. However, the two half-sages behind Sun Liang were not as lucky. Xiao Chen's punch struck them, and an overwhelming force surged out. The two vomited a mouthful of blood and went flying back with pale complexions. Even if they did not die, they would be severely injured. This scene was very ironic. Earlier, the two dodged the wine cup that Xiao Chen tossed out. In the end, 10-odd martial monarchs behind them died. Immediately, the two experienced what it was like to be abandoned. Unexpectedly, Sun Liang, whom they were supposed to rely on, abandoned them as well, choosing the most advantageous method for himself. Xiao Chen did not care about the two ordinary half-sages at all. He did not even bother to look at them. He immediately leaped up and chased after Sun Liang. Xiao Chen had been curious about why the Eternal Heavenly Sword School was purchasing dragon bones on such a large scale. Naturally, he would not let go of this opportunity that delivered itself to his doorstep. The empty floor turned cold and silent, leaving only Bai Qi and Xianyuan Zhantian exchanging glances. The development of the situation had completely exceeded the script in their hearts. Bai Qi sighed and said, no wonder he did not react at all when he heard that Bai Wuxue killed an inferior-grade martial sage. Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen is always full of surprises. Above the inn, Xiao Chen, who had just leaped off the roof, had not yet stabilized himself when a bolt of lightning tore through the sky. Sun Liang remained expressionless as he swung his sword at Xiao Chen, carrying the might of thunder. The electric light on Sun Liang's sword was withdrawn, looking very plain. However, it contained all of Sun Liang's law energy, not holding anything back. Xiao Chen pulled back his palm, not showing any intention of dodging. He drew the lunar shadow saber and clashed with the attack. Boom! The saber and sword clashed, and sparks flew out. Following that, two balls of dazzling purple light clashed with each other. Bolts of lightning flashed around the two. The two thunderclouds in the sky clashed intensely as well. The rumbling of thunder did not stop for even a moment. The sky changed color, and the winds and clouds moved chaotically. Such a horrifying scene immediately attracted the gazes of several cultivators in Hunluo City. Sun Liang had taken the initiative to attack from above. Furthermore, he held the advantage of his cultivation. After a while, he gained the upper hand, suppressing Xiao Chen step by step. Sun Liang could not help but reveal an expression of joy as he pressed his sword down. He smiled sinisterly and said, "Today, I will show you the difference between a martial sage and a half-sage. I will teach you a lesson on behalf of your elders." Xiao Chen smiled faintly, not flustered at all. He said softly, "Even among inferior-grade martial sages, there are strong and weak ones. Unfortunately, you are the weak one. It is not your turn to teach me a lesson." A light flashed on Xiao Chen's forehead, and the light of the immortal will of thunder spread out. Thunder roared and instantly suppressed Sun Liang's state of thunder, causing it to crumble and scatter. Xiao Chen, who had been retreating step by step, swung his saber forward. Light exploded, and Sun Liang, who held the upper hand, was knocked back. A kilometer away, shock flashed in the eyes of the pale Sun Liang. He said in a trembling voice with some horror, "Will of thunder." This is the will of thunder. The moment Xiao Chen's will appeared, the situation immediately turned around. Sun Liang's state of thunder completely crumbled. The thundercloud that belonged to Sun Liang slowly scattered. His aura plummeted continuously. Before the might of the will, Sun Liang's heart trembled. The fear in the depths of his heart made him not dare to get close to Xiao Chen. He looked at Xiao Chen with a horrified expression. Unexpectedly, a youth in the Tianwu domain managed to comprehend a will, a wondrous state that even several older generation martial sages could not comprehend. Rumor had it that anyone who comprehended a will would be able to fight someone of a higher cultivation realm as easily as eating or drinking unless their cultivation was much higher. Otherwise, when facing an opponent with a will, even if one's cultivation was higher, there would be no other outcome than death. In Sun Liang's hundreds of years, he had naturally met cultivators with wills. However, the other party's cultivation was higher than his, so they did not need to use their wills. Hence, Sun Liang had never clashed head-on with wills before. He had always felt that the rumors were exaggerated. However, now that he saw it for himself, he no longer dared to have such thoughts. The light of a will, invisible to the naked eye, spread out from Xiao Chen's body. The thunderclouds in the sky roared even more intensely. Under the boundless black clouds, bolt after bolt of purple lightning tore through the sky like long snakes. A huge shadow cast down, turning the sky dark. This made people wonder if the weather had changed. On the other hand, the state of thunder that Sun Liang had regathered was just a small patch of dark clouds. The roaring sound completely suppressed by Xiao Chen's lightning. Compared to Xiao Chen's, Sun Liang sounded like the helpless howls of a child, very laughable. When the several cultivators who rushed over saw this scene, their expressions all changed drastically. The branch master of the Eternal Heavenly Sword School's branch was actually forced into such a sorry state by a youth. When someone saw Xiao Chen's face, startled cries rang out from the crowd in the distance. What a fellow! It is actually him, the white-robed bladesman Xiao Chen. Previously, there was a rumor that he swept through the Star Grave Palace alone, snatching away all the painting pieces. After not seeing him for half a year, his strength has actually grown to such a level. It looks like the rumor is true. This fellow is truly incredible. Half a year ago, he dared to call back Wu Yuankai with words when he was only a martial monarch. Unexpectedly, half a year later, he is even more ridiculous, directly suppressing a martial sage. The scene of this white-clad youth barging into Hunluo City for the first time that night half a year ago was still vivid in the minds of the cultivators present, like it was yesterday. Half a year later, when the white-clad youth who had disappeared for a long time reappeared, he deeply shocked this group of lawless loose cultivators in Hunluo City. Xiao Chen's stern face glanced at Sun Liang, who was a kilometer away. Then, he held his saber with one hand and pushed off the air, starting to run. Up in the air, every time Xiao Chen took a step, the lightning in the sky would roar. It seemed to form a subtle connection with his footsteps. Chapter 780. Thunder roared and lightning flashed. As Xiao Chen ran, it became even more ferocious, and his vast aura soared. Xiao Chen's footsteps sounded like he was driving a vast army charging over. Clouds move with the wind, gathering wind and cloud. A saber light flashed as Xiao Chen executed the starting move of the lightning tribulation saber technique, which he had not used in a long time, gathering wind and cloud. The saber and sword clashed, giving off a melodious hum. Although it was an earth-ranked martial technique, with the support of the immortal will of thunder, it gave off a brilliant light and no weaker might. Dang! 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 Before the radiance of the will, Sun Liang's aura was at a complete disadvantage. His heart was heavy, and he was not in the mood to continue fighting. He only thought about how to leave. He feared that he might end up becoming a stepping stone for a young expert to become famous. However, the more Sun Liang thought about it, the harder it was for him to leave. Xiao Chen's aura flourished as he executed move after move of the lightning tribulation saber technique smoothly. Sun Liang was forced to use a heaven-ranked martial technique before he could barely contend with Xiao Chen. This scene confused several people. Is the will really that powerful? Sun Liang's heaven-ranked martial technique could not gain the upper hand against an earth-ranked martial technique. That is normal. Not only can the will suppress the opponent's state, but it can also raise one's strength in all aspects. Given this situation is understandable. Earthly lightning tribulation. Heavenly lightning tribulation. Divine lightning tribulation. After the lightning tribulation saber technique finished storing up power, Xiaoqin sent down the lightning tribulation. Amid the thousands of lightning bolts, his white robes made him look like a thunder god as he used the saber light to guide the lightning tribulation. Each bolt of lightning tribulation was more horrifying than the one before. After seeing the divine lightning in misleading fog lake, Xiaoqian's understanding of lightning tribulations deepened. The purple talisman in Xiaoqian's sea of consciousness gave off a bright light as immortal inscriptions circulated. The 3 bolts of lightning tribulation were like real lightning tribulations in the world. The heavy and oppressive atmosphere made it difficult to even speak. After 3 moves, Sun Liang retreated again and again. The lightning instantly blasted the surrounding buildings into rubble, kicking up a large cloud of dust. When the last bolt of divine lightning fell, a golden bolt of lightning tore through the sky. The sword in Sun Liang's hand was knocked away. He vomited a mouthful of blood and landed on the roof of a pavilion. It looks like my intuition was right. After comprehending the immortal will of thunder, the lightning tribulation saber technique is indeed very promising. Xiaoqin thought joyfully. Right now, he lacked a saber technique. He was not in a rush because he still had the lightning tribulation saber technique. The lightning tribulation saber technique was created by the heavenly saber pavilion's ancestor. Furthermore, there was much room for improvement. Now that Xiaoqin had comprehended a will, he had seen the divine grade lightning talisman. He could use his current comprehensions to develop the lightning tribulation saber technique once more, changing it into a saber technique that was most suitable for him. Today, he used Sun Liang to test his skills, which further strengthened Xiaoqian's thoughts. Looking up slightly, Xiaoqin saw that Sun Liang was about to get up and run. His gaze turned cold, and 2 balls of blazing lightning burst out from under his feet. In the sea formed by the hazy lightning, there seemed to be 2 blue dragons breaking out of the sea. An explosive power gushed out from under his feet, bringing Xiaoqin to the top of Sun Liang's head in an instant. Bang! Xiaoqin stomped on Sun Liang's chest, pushing him back without any hesitation. The 100 slender heavenly sage laws around Sun Liang danced around continuously, bursting out with horrifying energy as he tried to get back up. Xiaoqin smiled coldly, and the purple talisman in his sea of consciousness spun quickly. Rings of light from his will merged with the heavenly sage laws in his body, and the energy poured into his feet wildly. When Xiaoqian's feet landed on Sun Liang's chest, no matter how Sun Liang struggled or roared, he could not get back up. Sun Liang let out cries of humiliation and dissatisfaction. A strong wind blew in the surroundings. The energy from the heavenly sage laws rippled out, making space look blurry. However, all of this was useless. Sun Liang, who was being trampled on by Xiaoqin, could not change the outcome. In the distance, where the light of Xiaoqian's will could not reach, the cultivators who saw this miserable scene looked at Sun Liang with sympathy. A bona fide martial sage was an overlord no matter where he went. Today, a youth trampled on him, unable to move at all. Xiaoqin pressed the scabbard against Sun Liang's forehead, and a killing chi flowed up the scabbard and entered Sun Liang's mind. The bone-chilling aura caused the struggling Sun Liang to instantly lose his temper and become well-behaved. Xiaoqin asked calmly, "Let me ask you one more time. Why is the Eternal Heavenly Sword School collecting dragon bones on such a large scale?" As this matter concerned the Thunder King's death, Xiaoqin had no choice but to take such forceful measures. He wanted to destroy the other party's bottom line, both mentally and physically. "I don't know. This is the Supreme Elder's idea. I am not really a major character in the Eternal Heavenly Sword School." Sun Liang's eyes were filled with horror, and his voice trembled as he spoke. Xiaoqian's eyes lit up as he looked into the depths of the other party's eyes. His expression did not change. Perhaps the other party did not know the complete sequence of events, but he would at least know some clues. Qi. The scabbard exerted some force, and blood immediately flowed out of Sun Liang's forehead. Xiaoqin did not say anything. He only increased the intensity of his killing qi. I really don't know. I only know that he seems to be here to refine. Just as Sun Liang was about to say something crucial, something strange happened. A flying sword flickering with fluorescent light suddenly shot at Xiaoqin. Xiaoqin casually caught it. However, he had not expected this ordinary-looking sword strike to have such a strong might. It sent him flying with a jolt. The energy of the flying sword did not come from the spiritual energy of the world or the owner's quintessence. Instead, it came from the flying sword itself. Xiaoqin felt like he had seen the aura of the flying sword somewhere before. When he looked carefully, he discovered that the fluorescent light on the flying sword was not mental energy, quintessence, or vital qi. This was not mental strength, true essence, or physical strength. It was also not the energy produced by the fusion of the three. This was magic power. The Eros demon Lengyu had once helped Xiaoqin condense some magic energy, which was exactly the same as this fluorescent light. This flying sword was a bona fide magic treasure. Xiaoqin looked up. At some point in time, a black-cloaked man had appeared. The black-cloaked man quickly stretched out his hand, and an invisible hand grabbed Sun Liang. The black-cloaked man immediately hoisted Sun Liang's weak body onto his shoulder. Then, the person under the cloak recalled the flying sword back into his sleeve. Then, he tossed out an ancient-looking handkerchief and stood on it. Space flashed, and he vanished into thin air. This action was very fast, so fast that Xiaoqin could not react. Damn it! Xiaoqin cursed. His sea of consciousness surged as he looked around. He felt a strange fluctuation in the air in a certain direction, and his gaze immediately narrowed. Electric light burst out from under Xiaoqin's feet. He did not hesitate to give chase. When he raised his leg, he crossed 5 kilometers. Electric light burst out, and the blue dragon soared into the sky. Xiaoqin stepped on air in hot pursuit. In a few breaths, Xiaoqin left the vast Hunluo city far behind. After traveling 50 kilometers out of the city, Xiaoqin frowned and suddenly stopped. Xiaoqin circulated his energy for the Kunpeng fist, and his heavenly sage laws circulated. The sky suddenly turned dark. A huge shadow blocked out all the sunlight. The Kunpeng hates the sky for being too low. Xiaoqin roared and spread his arms like wings. Then, he flew towards a certain spot in the air. Then, without saying a word, he punched at a certain spot in the air. There was nothing there. Aside from air, there was nothing there. Ripples appeared in space, and a figure appeared. Everything seemed like it had purposely appeared before Xiaoqin's fist. It was very strange. A loud explosion resounded. Before the mysterious black-cloaked man could react, Xiaoqin's Kunpeng fist struck him. Ka-xie! Ka-xie! Crisp sounds rang out. The mysterious man's black cloak tore, and he vomited a mouthful of blood as he flew back 5 kilometers. This punch blasted Sun Liang, who was on the mysterious man's shoulder, into a mist of blood. Without any heavenly sage laws, the inner vest Xiaoqin wore was just a dead object. It did not have any effect at all. Xiaoqin stretched out his hand and grabbed the spatial ring in the mist of blood. Then, he soared into the air and teleported, appearing before the black-cloaked man. Ha! Aside from the deity race geniuses, I have never seen anyone in the younger generation with such vast mental energy like you. However, I am very curious. How did you know that my treasure can only travel 50 kilometers in one go? Without the hood covering his face, the man's appearance was surprisingly young. He was spirited and handsome, looking rather elegant and quick-witted. There was a wave of immortal energy flowing around him. He coughed softly and looked at Xiaoqin with eyes filled with spirituality. He did not seem to be afraid of Xiaoqin. Xiaoqin raised his guard and said indifferently, I don't know, and I don't need to know. As long as I know that you are not traveling into the void, I am confident of catching up to you. Interesting. Alright, you have already helped me kill him. Goodbye. Xiaochen smiled coldly and said, do you think you can leave? You are just a golden core cultivator who has not even formed a Yuanying, yet you still want to leave after being severely injured by me. This person was stunned. Clearly, he had not expected Xiaochen to figure out his identity with one glance. However, he remained calm after that. He said, you are quite knowledgeable. However, you really cannot stop me. Suddenly, the black-cloaked man swung his hand, and a golden rope appeared. The rope quickly elongated and flew towards Xiaochen. Xiaochen's expression changed slightly. He recognized this magic treasure for trapping people. However, he did not know what rank it was, so he quickly dodged. I cannot kill you, but you cannot do anything to me either. Leave quickly. The Eternal Heavenly Sword School is not as simple as you think. The mysterious man smiled gently and opened his hand. That handkerchief reappeared in front of him. Then, he stepped on it and vanished into thin air. That rope was rather difficult to deal with. After it locked onto Xiaochen, he could not shake it off no matter what. Furthermore, it was made of an unknown material. It was extremely difficult to break. Cassier. Cassier. After the time it took to brew a pot of tea, Xiaochen circulated all his quintessence and swung his saber 4 times before he finally managed to chop the rope into 5 pieces. The mysterious man in the distance seemed to feel that his magic treasure had been broken. A pained expression appeared on his face. He said sullenly, this fellow is really monstrous. He actually managed to break the dragon trapping rope that Master gave me to protect my life. However, Xiaochen's expression turned even more unsightly. Unexpectedly, an ordinary rope had entangled him for so long. Chapter 781. Ao Jiao, are there still sects in the Kunlun realm that preserve the inheritances of immortal arts? Ao Jiao replied softly, I'm not sure. I heard that in the easternmost region of the Kunlun realm, in the depths of the chaotic demonic sea, there are still some sects that preserve the inheritances of immortal arts. However, they do not have many inheritances, they are extremely limited. Furthermore, immortal cultivation is not like the martial Tao, where everyone can cultivate it. Without an immortal destiny, one cannot even reach the basic level. Those sects are not considered major powers. Xiaochen entered deep thought. Although the compendium of cultivation in his mind contained the systematic knowledge of talismans, formations, medicinal pills, and immortal arts, there were very few high-ranked immortal arts. However, there were very few high-grade immortal techniques, and all of them required magic power to activate. The immortal arts and talismans that could use mental energy to cultivate were of lower ranks. They were not as mighty as the various martial techniques, not to mention heaven-ranked martial techniques. Hence, Xiaochen had neglected the cultivation of immortal arts. Instead of using his time to cultivate low-ranked magic techniques, he would be much more efficient in cultivating martial techniques. However, after the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation broke through to the 7th layer, there would be a major change. If Xiaochen really had an immortal destiny, he might be able to cultivate magic energy. Xiaochen collected his thoughts and said, unfortunately, Sun Liang still died. There is no way to know why the Eternal Heavenly Sword School was collecting dragon bones. There is no need to feel unfortunate. I already guessed it. When he said, refine, the last word should be medicinal pill. The only medicinal pill that requires so many dragon bones to refine is the True Dragon Life Replenishing Pill. True Dragon Life Replenishing Pill. Ao Jiao nodded and said, that's right. It is the True Dragon Fame Pill, a peerless medicinal pill that can extend Emperor Wu's lifespan. It looks like that Eternal Heavenly Sword Sage did enter Emperor Wu. However, his talent is not good, and he does not have much lifespan left. To refine the True Dragon Fame Pill, one needs a special flame. Only the chaotic demonic sea has it. I guess that person was the cultivator that the Eternal Heavenly Sword School invited to refine medicinal pills. A light flashed in Xiao Chen's eyes as he said, "In that case, this eternal sky sword sage really is related to the Thunder King's death." Ao Jiao said in a deep voice, "I've seen this person before. Back then, he was guided by the Thunder King many times. With his talent, if he didn't have great help, he definitely wouldn't be able to enter Emperor Wu's realm. The death of the Thunder King is most likely related to him." When Xiao Chen returned to Hunluo City with a heavy heart, he saw Bai Qi and Xianyuan Zhangtian. The two of them thanked him for helping out. "Ha ha! I really underestimated you. It is hard to predict who will emerge victorious in your one-year appointment with Bai Wuxue." Xiao Chen could even trample an inferior-grade martial sage under his feet, rendering him immobile. Naturally, Bai Qi and Lu Jingning did not doubt Xiao Chen's strength. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and did not say anything. Now that he knew that the Eternal Heavenly Sword School was related to the Thunder King's death, he felt even more anxious. As a rank 8 sect, the Eternal Heavenly Sword School had far more than one inferior-grade martial sage. It would be extremely difficult to find the Eternal Sky Emperor Wu, who was in closed-door cultivation somewhere, and ask him about the true cause of the Thunder King's death. However, no matter how difficult it was, Xiao Chen had to try. Be it for Ao Jiao or his own promise, he could not give up so easily. After saying goodbye to the two, Xiao Chen headed for the Flourishing Heaven Pavilion in the city. There were no major auctions taking place recently, so there were not many cultivators coming and going in front of the Flourishing Heaven Pavilion. Xiao Chen stopped and looked at the signboard with golden words on it, entering deep thought. After hesitating for a while, Xiao Chen entered. When he saw someone in the hall, his eyes could not help but light up. A pretty maidservant smiled faintly as she walked over to Xiao Chen. This was Xiao Mei, who had served him in the past. "Young Master Xiao, after not seeing you for half a year, your strength has improved again. Congratulations." Xiao Mei's red lips parted, and her melodious and pleasing voice rang out. "I wonder, what is young master's purpose in coming to the Flourishing Heaven Pavilion?" Xiao Chen did not bother saying anything. He immediately took out a piece of paper and listed several spirit herbs and medicinal flowers on it. These were all the ingredients needed to refine the Breaking Sage Pill. Some of the ingredients were very precious, the kind that could only be found and not sought. Xiao Chen had not expected to collect them all in one go. He only instructed Xiao Chen to give him double the amount of everything he could collect. After that, he specifically instructed Xiao Chen to buy the heart-nourishing flower if there were any. The heart-nourishing flower was a necessity for cultivating the firmament body tempering art to the next layer. In the past, Xiao Chen did not have astral coins. Even if he came across it, he could not afford it. Now that he had astral coins, he naturally had to pay attention to it. After Xiao Mei listened carefully and recorded everything down, she smiled and said, "Young Master Xiao, please wait in the pavilion first. I will go and help you arrange it. Furthermore, the Nangong Venerate has been waiting for you for a long time already." This development stunned Xiao Chen slightly. This woman, Ying Qiong, has not left yet. In the pavilion on the 3rd floor of the Flourishing Heaven Pavilion, the spacious room looked very elegant and quiet. The incense burner on the tea table gave off white smoke. Ying Qiong returned to her usual noble and imposing appearance. She looked elegant and refined, elegant and refined. As she watched Xiao Chen walk to the door, she smiled faintly. "Young Master Xiao, after half a year, you are even more elegant than before. You are even able to trample on a bona fide inferior-grade martial sage. This little girl admires and respects you." Xiao Chen smiled faintly and stepped forward. His footsteps were silent, but they carried an invisible force that struck the ground. When Xiao Chen was only 10 steps away from the tea table, his gaze sank. Then, he attacked at lightning speed, throwing a punch at Ying Qiong. Putting down the teacup, Ying Qiong pushed off with her feet and gently drifted backward. Xiao Chen landed on the tea table and pushed off the ground, giving chase. His body soared into the air, and his right leg kicked out with a whistling sound. Dang! 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 The two of them did not use any quintessence or vital chi in the room. They simply exchanged blows, their fists and feet clashing, giving off powerful sounds. Soon, the two exchanged 100 moves. Their figures flew around the pavilion, moving back and forth. As they attacked and defended, they advanced and retreated. However, no one managed to gain the upper hand. Suddenly, Xiaochen narrowed his eyes and stretched out his hand to grab Ying Qiong's fist. Then, he used some strength to prevent her from struggling free. Ying Qiong's pretty face changed slightly. After trying a few times, she discovered that she was no match for Xiaochen in terms of physical strength. However, she did not really want to fight with Xiaochen. She could not help but say angrily, "Let go." Xiaochen smiled faintly and did not say anything. He directly pulled, catching Ying Qiong off guard. Then, he stretched out his hand and pulled her into his embrace. An elegant fragrance came from the girl in his embrace. With a gentle sniff, Xiaochen poked his head out. Their eyes met, and their noses nearly touched. This posture looked very ambiguous. The two spun around and gently landed on the tea table. "Let go of me." "What are you doing?" Ying Qiong frowned. She could not figure out what Xiaochen was trying to do, so she felt very nervous. Ying Qiong opened her mouth and exhaled hot air, making Xiaochen's face feel very comfortable. Feeling the girl struggling, Xiaochen could not help but put more strength into his arms. When their eyes met, Ying Qiong saw Xiaochen's clear eyes and a playful expression. She could not help but feel guilty. "Bo." Unexpectedly, Xiaochen tapped gently and his lips landed on Ying Qiong's tender, red lips. The air seemed to freeze. Ying Qiong's eyes widened in shock. She could no longer care about anything else. Quintessence surged from her body, trying to push Xiaochen away. However, Xiaochen raised his head and smiled, dodging in advance. Bang! 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 Some of the decorations nearby shattered, crushed by Ying Qiong's quintessence. As Ying Qiong stood on the tea table, her pretty face turned cold. A faint murderous intent appeared in her eyes as she said in a frosty voice, "Xiaochen, you are really bold. Are you not afraid that I will fall out with you?" Xiaochen laughed loudly and said, "If there were people who could make me stay in this flourishing heaven pavilion, would you still be so polite to me? If you want to ask me if I have another core painting piece, just say so." Xiaochen's spiritual sense detected 4 martial sages in Hunluo City's flourishing heaven pavilion. Among them, there was even a medial-grade martial sage. With such strength, it was no wonder no one dared to cause trouble within 5 kilometers of the flourishing heaven pavilion. However, it was not realistic to keep Xiaochen, who had merged Thunder Steps and the Blue Dragon Cloud soaring art. Even if he could not defeat a medial-grade martial sage, he could still leave. Xiaochen had once nearly died because of this girl. He could not beat her up or kill her. However, he had to take some advantage of her. Hence, the earlier kiss. Now that this girl was clearly furious but could not do anything to him, Xiaochen achieved his goal. He felt much happier in his heart. When Ying Qiong heard Xiaochen's words, a clear fluctuation appeared in her eyes. She said softly, "You really obtained the other core painting piece. Indeed, I guessed that the barrier would not be able to hold you for long." Right after she spoke, Ying Qiong's expression returned to normal. Suddenly, a smile appeared in her eyes as she looked meaningfully at Xiaochen. Xiaochen's skin was not thin. If the other party wanted to look, he would just let her be. His expression did not change at all. "I originally thought that young Master Xiao was extraordinary. You do not lust after beauties and have a pure Tao heart. It looks like you have surpassed this little girl's expectations. However, there are some women that you cannot touch. Do you know what kind of trouble your kiss has brought you?" Xiaochen answered honestly, "I do not know what kind of trouble it is, but I feel much happier. My thoughts are clear now. The matter of you trapping me in the stone room back then is now even. How hateful. This fellow actually did all this just to take revenge for tricking me back then. Am I, Ying Qiong, really that unattractive? Ing Cheong's expression changed, and the smile in her eyes vanished. After a long time, she suppressed the fluctuating emotions in her heart and said, "Very well, I will not speak nonsense with you. I need the other half of your core painting piece." Xiaochen replied straightforwardly, "That is impossible. Don't be in a rush to reject me. I do not know what fortuitous encounter you had. It looks like you have indeed grasped the immortal epoc's alchemy. However, the main ingredients of the breaking sage pill, the flaming sun fruit, the three holy masters' grass, and the heaven dragon flower. Even if you have astral coins, you will not be able to buy them." Xiaochen raised his eyebrows and asked, "What are you trying to say?" "You have the breaking sage pill. If you want to advance to martial sage, you are almost certain. This core painting piece is not very useful to you. However, it is my opportunity to advance to martial sage." Ing Cheong continued, "Give me the core painting piece in your hand, and I will give you the flaming sun fruit, the three holy masters' grass, and the heaven dragon flower. It is a fair trade, each taking what they need." Ing Cheong's words were worth considering. Martial sage was still far from Xiaochen's current level. However, once he accumulated sufficient accumulations in the half-sage realm, his opportunity to advance to martial sage would be in the breaking sage pill's alchemic recipe. If it was as the other party said, those three spirit herbs could not be bought even if one had money, that would be problematic. Chapter 782. Ao Jiao, is what she said right? Ao Jiao nodded and said, "More or less. These three spirit herbs surpass rank 9 and can be considered peerless. Anyone who has them would not lack astral coins." Xiaochen said without batting an eyelid, "Can you give me these three spirit herbs now?" Seeing that Xiaochen seemed to waver, Ing Cheong rejoiced. She said, "I can't, but I can think of a way to collect them for you within 1 year." Xiaochen calculated the time. If nothing unexpected happened, he would have accumulated enough astral coins to advance to half-sage after 1 year. If the other party could really do it, he could consider it. To Xiaochen, the core painting piece could greatly increase his strength. However, it was not an opportunity for him to advance to martial sage. If Xiaochen could advance to martial sage 1 year earlier, his future accomplishments would be higher. For the sake of the Thunder King, he needed to advance to martial sage as soon as possible. Compared to advancing to martial sage, half a core painting piece was nothing. "Alright, I promise you. If you can really find the flaming sun fruit, the three holy masters' grass, and the heaven dragon flower, you can come and look for me at any time. Of course, if you wait too long, I can change my mind at any time." Ing Cheong smiled sweetly and said, "It's a deal. Take the spirit herbs you bought from the Flourishing Heaven Pavilion as a small gift from me." After a while, Xiaomei entered the pavilion and brought out 2 sets of all the ingredients for the breaking sage pill. Aside from the flaming sun fruit, the three holy masters' grass, and the heaven dragon flower, there were still a few spirit herbs and strange fruits that Xiaochen had not collected. However, these were not too rare and could be found after some time. The crucial thing was the 3 spirit herbs that Ing Cheong mentioned. These were things that could only be found by luck and not sought. That was the real headache. In the end, Xiaomei said somewhat apologetically, "As for the heart-nourishing flower, it is a rare spirit herb. Normally, no one would take it out for auction unless there is a large-scale auction. Directly consuming the heart-nourishing flower could strengthen the toughness of a cultivator's heart. The heart was the weakness of all cultivators. There was no need to worry about people not buying it." Xiaochen didn't have much hope, so he waved his hand and let Xiaomei go. The total value of the pile of materials was more than 2 million star coins. Ing Cheong was willing to pay for it, and Xiaochen was also happy to let her pay for it. "This is where we part ways. Goodbye." Since he had achieved his goal, Xiaochen didn't want to waste any more time here. He got up and left. Ing Cheong stood up to send him off. Looking at his silhouette, her jade-like hand touched her red lips. Her eyes flashed with an indescribable light as she sighed, "I don't know if it's him or me who's losing out." This lady's first kiss was actually taken away by such an unromantic person. After leaving the flourishing Heaven Pavilion, Xiaochen asked around about the whereabouts of the third evildoer, Zhong Zhenghao, who won the bid for the broken Thunderwood sword. He found out that Zhong Zhenghao had not returned to Hunluo City for half a year since he won the bid for the broken sword. There were rumors that Zhong Zhenghao had offended a major character in Hunluo City and did not dare to remain. So he took the broken subdivine weapon to the even more dangerous and chaotic primal chaos domain. The people gathered in Hunluo City were only human and fiend race loose cultivators. Furthermore, there was only one province. The primal chaos domain was different. It gathered all the loose cultivators of the Kunlun realm's 5 domains. It was a truly chaotic place. There was a vast difference in the degree of chaos between the two. When Xiaochen heard this news, he could only sigh helplessly. It looked like his plan to retrieve the broken Thunderwood sword would have to be shelved indefinitely. After killing the inferior grade martial sage of the Eternal Heavenly Sword School, he could not remain here for long. Now that everything was settled, Xiaochen directly left the city and flew for 3 days and 3 nights in one go. Then, he landed in front of a rather desolate valley. This place is already completely out of Hunluo province. There is no longer any danger. The experts from the Eternal Heavenly Sword School headquarters should not be able to find any traces of me. Xiaochen landed in the valley and muttered to himself. In the valley filled with rocks, Xiaochen cleared out an empty space. Then, he sat down cross-legged and entered a state of cultivation. Strands of heavenly sage laws surged in Xiaochen's body, and his quintessence recovered at a visible rate. The clouds in his dantian slowly piled up. After using the Thunder Dragon steps for 3 days straight, Xiaochen had exhausted too much quintessence. He would not be able to recover to his peak state so quickly. Thunder Dragon steps was a movement technique that merged Thunder steps and the Blue Dragon cloud soaring art. Xiaochen gave it this name. The name was not very nice, but it fit the image. 6 hours later, Xiaochen opened his eyes. A bright light shone in his eyes. His quintessence had completely recovered. Ao Jiao, accompany me in practicing with the saber. You should have benefited a lot from your cultivation at Misleading Fog Lake, right? A beam of white light came out of the immortal spirit ring on Xiaochen's finger. Then, the petite and cute girl with a Lolita face and an exceptionally voluptuous figure floated out. 2 sabers of light materialized in Ao Jiao's hands. Her bright eyes looked at Xiaochen as she smiled. This is really rare. To think that you actually want me to accompany you in practicing with the saber. It looks like you are not as calm as I thought about your 1-year appointment with Bai Wuxue. Xiaochen revealed an expression of deep thought. Then, he said, the extreme north of the Kunlun realm is a bitter and cold land. It is desolate and uninhabited, and danger lurks everywhere. Since ancient times, many genius cultivators have fallen there. For Bai Wuxue to emerge from there, how can I underestimate him? Ao Jiao withdrew her smile and said, that's right. Back then, the Thunder King was there as well. That place was a world of ice and snow. In the depths, there were even some remnants of the snow race of the ancient 100 races. Even the Thunder King did not dare to underestimate their inheritance. Xiaochen's expression turned grave. He said sullenly, that is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that he has the strength to kill an inferior grade martial sage. Furthermore, he is a loose cultivator ranked in the top 10 of the evil cultivator ranking. He is not an ordinary inferior grade martial sage. Ao Jiao raised her pretty eyebrows slightly and said, hee hee. Don't undervalue yourself. Right now, everyone in the entire Tianwu domain does not think highly of you. They are waiting to see you make a fool of yourself. However, I believe that you will not lose. Now that the great era has arrived, the situation in the Tianwu domain is changing. The geniuses of the 3,000 great realms will all appear. There will definitely be a place for you on the stage of absolute geniuses. Xiaochen nodded and smiled. Then, he said, let's practice the saber. Help me test out some of my recent ideas about the lightning tribulation saber technique. Gladly. There were less than 3 months left to the 1-year promise. Including the time spent on the trip to the Extreme Yin sect's headquarters, there was less than 2 months left for Xiao Qin to comprehend the new lightning tribulation saber technique. It was almost impossible for an ordinary person to reinvent a new saber technique in 2 months. From a certain perspective, modifying a saber technique required even more time than creating a saber technique. Creating a saber technique depended on comprehension. Once one comprehended it, one could instantly create a saber technique. After that, one just had to slowly polish it. Back then, the ancestor of the heavenly saber pavilion observed a spirit beast undergoing its tribulation and gained some comprehension. In one night, he created the lightning tribulation saber technique. However, when modifying a saber technique, one had to consider its rigor. After all, a complete saber technique involved many things. If one changed it slightly, there would be changes. If one was not careful, one might end up crippling oneself. Hence, rigor was crucial. This required a cultivator's accumulation and understanding of saber techniques. The days in the valley went by one after another. As Xiao Qin anxiously modified the lightning tribulation saber technique, the time for the duel approached. The time for the duel slowly approached. Several of the Tianwu domain's geniuses in closed-door cultivation also came out. Thunder and Lightning Palace, at a palace floating in thunderclouds, and Juanxi, dressed in azure, slowly walked out of the clouds. He stared at the Extreme Yin sect in the north with some anticipation in his eyes. Bolts of lightning flashed behind Juanxi in the dark clouds, creating a very terrifying mysterious phenomenon. It was like he was immersed in a sea of lightning. First senior brother. A few true inheritors passing by saw this scene and quickly flew over to greet Juanxi respectfully. Now, Juanxi had fought to a draw with the Holy Son, Feng Wuji. His prestige in the sect already surpassed that of several inner sect elders. The respectful expressions of these true inheritors were not fake at all, they all came from the bottom of their hearts. There is no need to stand on ceremony. How many days until the duel between Bai Wuxue and that Haotian sect disciple? Juanxi asked calmly with a sharp gaze. The other disciples were somewhat confused. Why is first senior brother so concerned about this? Could it be that a person destined to become a joke is worth first senior brother coming out of closed-door cultivation early? Replying to first senior brother, the time will be up in 1 month. Bai Wuxue has already returned to the Extreme Yin sect. However, there has been no news of that white-robed bladesman. He is probably afraid now. Although these disciples muttered to themselves, they still answered Juanxi's question in full detail. 1 month, huh? It is time for me to depart. How can someone who comprehended the immortal state of thunder be afraid? Juanxi revealed a smile on his face. Then, he turned into a beam of lightning and vanished from the sight of the true inheritors. This caused these true inheritors to be stunned for a long time before they managed to react. In the drill ground of the Shimen noble clan, Shimen Bao was currently sparring with a senior of the clan, exchanging pointers with his saber techniques. Every move was sharp and boundlessly exquisite. There was also an extremely ferocious aura that made others want to retreat. That old man dealt with Shimen Bao as he nodded to himself. After exchanging pointers, the old man nodded and said, "Successor, your improvement in the past year is gratifying." The old ancestor's teachings were not in vain. Shimen Bao casually wiped the sweat off his forehead. When he recalled the days of being taught by his great-grandfather, he could not help but tremble. A ferocious light flashed in Shimen Bao's eyes as he said, "For the sake of that person who once humiliated me, I have not relaxed at all in the past year. I just hope that he will not disappoint me." Juanxi slowly walked into the residence that belonged to Shui Lingling of the Haotian sect. Juanxi whispered, "First senior sister, it is time for us to depart. The transportation formation cannot take us directly to the Extreme Yin sect. It will take another month to get there." Shui Lingling raised her head, feeling somewhat fatigued. She asked, "Is there still no news of Xiao Qin?" Junsi shook her head and replied, "There is no news of junior brother Xiao within the 100 provinces of the Tianwu domain. I believe that he must have left the Tianwu domain and have to use the Bushan Palace's intelligence network to find out." Shui Lingling said helplessly, "Not just anyone can use the Bushan Palace's intelligence network. Even the sons of the 3 holy masters do not have such authority. Could something have happened to junior brother Xiao?" Junsi asked somewhat worriedly. "Or perhaps it is like the rumors say, he is afraid to go." Chapter 783. Undetectable worry flashed in Shui Lingling's eyes. She smiled and said, "That won't happen. He promised me that he would definitely return. As for the rumors, there is no need to care about them. Let's go." The sky turned dark. Boundless thunderclouds churned like a river with huge waves, rising and falling without end. The vast sky stretched for 50 kilometers around, filled with darkness. With one glance, it looked like the sky was about to fall. It was so dark that it was scary. Pooh! Suddenly, it seemed like a strand of saber light tore through the thick dark clouds. It was like a hole appeared in the sky. Boundless light poured out, forming a dazzling pillar of light. In this dark and gloomy world, this beam of light looked exceptionally resplendent. Dang! 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 2 figures flashed in the light, quickly exchanging moves. Bolts of lightning moved around the 2 like raging pythons, causing the sky to flicker endlessly. Gradually, the surrounding lightning no longer looked like raging pythons. Instead, they turned into realistic raging pythons. The huge lightning pythons had purple scales on their bodies, clearly visible. The eyes on the snakes' heads were like lightning, revealing a ferocious look. Over 100 lightning pythons danced around the 2 of them. From a distance, it looked like many lightning dragons dancing in the sky. That spot of light started to move. It was like a heavenly saber slicing the dark clouds for 50 kilometers around in half. The 2 clashing figures continuously moved along with the light. The sound of weapons clashing was like heavenly thunder. It was oppressive and filled with boundless explosive power, causing the air to buzz. Even when the shockwave reached 3 kilometers away, its might did not diminish. Many flowers and trees trembled and withered. The 2 fighting were none other than Xiao Chen and Ao Jiao. After comprehending day and night, they slowly perfected their brand new lightning tribulation saber technique. When the light completely sliced through the dark clouds for 50 kilometers around, the thunderclouds scattered and the darkness was swept away. The blazing sun's light poured down without holding anything back. The golden sunlight illuminated the land once more. Xiao Chen and Ao Jiao stopped fighting and turned into 2 streams of light. In an instant, they landed in the desolate valley. Ao Jiao gently waved her hand and put away the lightsaber in her hand. She smiled and said, "Hee hee. Not bad. In less than 2 months, you have more or less finished modifying the new lightning tribulation saber technique. Furthermore, its might is extraordinary. It probably won't take long for the lightning phenomenon to turn into a flood dragon." Xiao Chen smiled faintly, a look of joy on his face. By relying on the immortal will of thunder and the unforgettable divine lightning talisman deeply imprinted in his mind, the process of modifying the lightning tribulation saber technique went much smoother than Xiao Chen expected. For the new lightning tribulation saber technique, Xiao Chen removed the state of wind and the state of cloud, continuing to strengthen the state of thunder. Without wind and clouds, there would be no thunder. Only when the wind and clouds changed could thunder move in all directions. This was the old lightning tribulation saber technique. If Xiao Chen wanted to bring out its might to great perfection, he needed to have some understanding of the state of wind and the state of cloud. However, now, Xiao Chen gave up on it. The reason was that he simply did not have the time to comprehend the state of wind and the state of cloud. Rumor had it that in some of the large-scale auctions in the Kunlun realm, there were crystals that could allow one to comprehend all sorts of states after consuming them. Unfortunately, they were very expensive. Even large-scale auctions could not be held on a whim. Distant water could not quench present thirst. The more important reason was that even if Shaoqin comprehended the state of wind and cloud and brought out the might of the old lightning tribulation saber technique to great perfection, it would only be a peak earth-ranked martial technique equal to the four-season saber technique. In the end, it was not a heaven-ranked martial technique. It could not keep up with Shaoqin's current progress. He needed to completely break the rules and come up with a revolutionary innovation. He needed to forge the new lightning tribulation saber technique into a saber technique equal to a heaven-ranked martial technique. Furthermore, it needed to have a stable room for improvement, something that could accompany him for a long time. Since there was no wind or clouds, how could there be lightning? Without lightning, how could there be a lightning tribulation saber technique? The idea that Shaoqin came up with was very simple. In the past, the scattered state of thunder had extraordinary might. However, it was scattered, after all. Now, the immortal state of thunder was completely condensed. The lightning that it casually shot out was no weaker than natural lightning. That was right. The idea that Shaoqin came up with was to use his immortal will of thunder to replace the lightning produced by the collision of wind and cloud, using it in the lightning tribulation saber technique. As the might of the immortal will of thunder increased, the lightning tribulations that the lightning tribulation saber technique materialized would continuously increase as well. This would be sufficient to accompany Shaoqin for a long time. Using one's body as lightning to materialize a tribulation was the essence of the new lightning tribulation saber technique. Aside from the last 3 moves of the new lightning tribulation saber technique, the starting moves and storing up power all changed. Shaoqin pulled it into 12 moves. There were 6 basic moves, 3 moves of lightning gathering, and 3 moves of killing. Collecting his wandering thoughts, Shaoqin looked to the north of the boundless sky and muttered, "It is time to set off. Along the way, I will try to upgrade the berserk lightning python mysterious phenomenon to a lightning flood dragon." Naturally, this inspiration came from the tens of thousands of true dragons around the divine lightning talisman. Naturally, it was impossible to make lightning transform into a true dragon in one step. Shaoqin could only take it slow, taking it step by step. Starting from the berserk python, then the lightning flood dragon, then the true dragon, and finally the true dragon lightning. The blazing sun shone down from the sky, casting a long shadow on Shaoqin. Ao Jiao looked at the radiant Shaoqin. Her lips curled up in a satisfied smile. The 2 figures turned into beams of light and flew out of the valley, disappearing into the sky. Target, the first 9 ranks of the great families of the north, the Extreme Yin sect. The Extreme Yin sect was the top sect of the 27 northern provinces. Among the 9 ranks of the great families of the entire Tianwu domain, this sect was second only to the Thunder and Lightning Palace, which the Thunder King presided over. The sect had 20,000 disciples. On the surface, there were 2 Emperor Wu, who guarded the sect all year round. Even after experiencing several demonic calamities, the sect did not fall. Outside the vast starry heavens, there were still many Emperor Wu of the Extreme Yin sect. Such a secret was not something that outsiders could know. Over the long years, the Extreme Yin sect had become the center of the north, establishing a high prestige. In terms of prestige and status, the Extreme Yin sect was much higher than the top sect of the south, the Haotian sect. Practically no sect in the north dared to oppose the Extreme Yin sect. They relied on absolute strength and accumulations. As for the Haotian sect's prestige, it relied more on its new top true inheritor, Shui Lingling. Its strength and accumulations were not much higher than the Full Moon Pavilion and the Thousand Mystery sect, which were also in the south. Normally, the Extreme Yin sect was very lively. There would always be cultivators from the other sects in the north coming to ask for advice or spend large sums of money to buy medicinal pills, spirit weapons, and spirit-gathering pearls from Extreme Yin City. However, today, the Extreme Yin sect was exceptionally noisy. A large group of cultivators had already gathered at the challenge peak outside Extreme Yin City. Thousands of beams of light could be seen from the horizon, heading for the summit. The challenge peaks of the various sects were all about the same. A major character had shaved off the summit and turned it into a vast drill ground. At the center of the martial practice grounds was an enormous arena meticulously constructed from various precious ores, and not far from the arena was a bronze bell that was filled with an ancient charm. When the bell rang, it meant that the challenge had begun. A figure stood quietly on the arena with his eyes closed, deep in thought. Wisps of faintly discernible cold air spread out from his body, causing the air to become extremely cold for no apparent reason. This was the top true inheritor of the extreme Yin sect. Despite the changes in the Tianwu continent, his fame did not diminish, one of the 7 giants, Bai Wuxue. The beams of light heading for the summit immediately stopped a kilometer away from the summit, not advancing any further. Everyone knew that Bai Wuxue had personally killed an inferior-grade martial sage loose cultivator 3 months ago. If they really fought later, the shockwaves would quickly spread to the entire summit. However, not many people believed that Xiaochen would come. Ha! It is almost noon already. That white-robed bladesman still has not appeared. He probably will not come. How could he dare to come? Right now, Bai Wuxue does not even care about inferior-grade martial sages. He most likely comprehended a will. Now that I think about it, what that brat said back then was just a joke. After all, Bai Wuxue is Bai Wuxue. I guess he received news that a lower realm demonic genius that challenged Bai Wuxue not long ago directly crushed him to pieces, frightening that brat. The Sage War of the Proud Son of Heaven ranking will start soon. Perhaps Bai Wuxue will be able to fight against the 4 holy scions. Similar voices rang out in the crowd in the air. The rumors all favored Bai Wuxue. No one thought highly of Xiaochen. In the end, strength reigned supreme in the Kunlun realm. Now that Bai Wuxue had defeated a martial sage with his fist, his fame grew. Naturally, the winds would change. A tyrannical beam of light flew by. It was the Shiman noble clan's Shiman Bao. When he saw the lonely Bai Wuxue in the arena, disappointment flashed in his eyes. Soon after, the passionate young master, Murong Lingfeng, the top genius of the battle realms, Niu Deng, the top bladesman of the south, Feng Xingsheng, and the mysterious swordsman, Duan Yi, who had been in the limelight recently, all arrived. The arrival of so many young demonic geniuses surpassed everyone's expectations. Some had not expected this, so discussions broke out. Just at this moment, a huge purple bird slowly flew over from the distance. Someone immediately recognized it as the Haotian sect's Shui Lingling's spirit beast, the profound sun bird. Look, the Haotian sect's people are here. The white-robed brat is really not up there. Some sharp-eyed people did not discover Xiaochen's figure above, so they immediately made a big fuss. The Haotian sect's people on the bird's back could not help but show unsightly expressions. Jun Si frowned and said, "These people are really snobs." First senior sister, could it be that junior brother Xiaochen is really not here? Someone behind Jun Si asked. Just as Shui Lingling was about to answer, she heard a commotion in the crowd. She turned around to take a look. Behind her, a thundercloud scattered. It was the newly promoted Holy Scion, Anjuanshi, who had arrived. Anjuanshi's appearance immediately raised the atmosphere to a climax. Even Bai Wuxue, who had his eyes closed in deep thought, suddenly opened them. Snowflakes flashed in his eyes, materializing a boundless mysterious phenomenon of 5,000 kilometers of ice, blazing with a boundless fighting spirit. Anjuanshi smiled faintly. His figure flashed, and he landed on a nearby peak, no longer bothering with Bai Wuxue. Chapter 784. Time slowly went by, but Xiaochen still had not arrived. The cultivators, who originally had some interest and hope, all lost their patience. Several of them even started cursing in low voices. What bullshit agreement of 1 year? He is just a coward. To think that Bai Wuxue even formally acknowledged him. It turns out that he is only a so-so. Even if he did not want to come, he could have just sent someone to admit defeat. He made us wait for so long for nothing. He has thoroughly embarrassed the Haotian sect. When Jun Si and the others on the profound sun bird heard these discussions, they could not help but show even more anxious and unsightly expressions. Regardless of the reason for Xiao Chen's cowardice before the fight had even begun, the Haotian sect's reputation had been tarnished. Jun Si said hesitantly, "First senior sister, I think we should discuss this. Dragging this out is not a solution." Shui Lingling's gentle face remained calm as usual. She said calmly, "Don't worry. Since he promised me that he would return safely, he will definitely rush over." Boom! Just as some of the extreme Yin sect elders were getting impatient and wanted to announce Xiao Chen's forfeit, a bolt of purple lightning suddenly tore through the sky. It was like a spear descending. In an instant, it crashed into that bronze bell. Within a radius of 5 kilometers, the deafening sound of a bell rang out incessantly. When the bell rang, the rumbling thunder and the deep chime merged together, echoing everywhere and rushing to the clouds. A figure landed somewhat hurriedly. As he looked at Bai Wuxue, who was in front of the arena, he said calmly, "Xiao Chen has arrived on time for the agreement of 1 year." On the profound sun bird, Shui Lingling's pretty face melted like water. An indescribable joy appeared on her face as she smiled and said, "I just knew that he would rush over." The bell's chime resounded endlessly. The purple lightning that descended from the sky was still very mighty. Arcs of electricity crackled and danced around the ancient bronze bell, showing no signs of stopping. The moment the white figure appeared, the cultivators hovering in the air a kilometer away from the challenge peak could not help but look over. He really made it. He knows that he will lose, but he still dares to come and fight. He has some guts. He's just asking to be humiliated. What does it matter whether he comes or not? You can't say that. Cowering before a fight and coming as promised are two completely different things. Let me ask you, if we knew that Bai Wuxue could kill half-sages, would we have the courage to come and fight? That's right. No matter what, I admire your courage. Xiao Chen's arrival was out of many people's expectations, and the criticism about him lessened by a lot. Knowing that he would lose, he still dared to fight. This courage earned Xiao Chen a lot of positive evaluations for his victory. Shiman Bao smiled, and a murderous intent appeared on his face. He said in a cold voice, "I hope that Bai Wuxue can spare your life. Otherwise, this will be too boring." The top genius of the battle realms, Niu Deng, had a similarly hostile gaze. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he said, "Unexpectedly, you managed to break through to half-sage in 1 year. However, you do not stand a chance against Bai Wuxue." The passionate young master, Murong Lingfeng, and the full moon pavilion's Feng Xingsheng both showed expressions of pity. Xiao Chen managed to break through to half-sage in 1 year. Such talent could be considered top-notch even in the current age of martial artists where heroes were rising together. Unfortunately, Xiao Chen ran into Bai Wuxue. Defeat was certain. It all depended on whether Bai Wuxue was willing to spare Xiao Chen's life or not. Otherwise, if Xiao Chen fell here, it would truly be a pity. Ordinary cultivators would not be able to see the heavenly sage laws behind Xiao Chen. However, these peak experts could see it with one glance. Although they could not see it clearly, the fact that Xiao Chen could comprehend heavenly sage laws proved that he was a martial sage. Such a cultivation realm and talent shocked several people. However, they still did not think much of Xiao Chen, as his opponent was simply too horrifying. He could even kill a martial sage. How heaven-defying was he? How demonic was he? So what if Xiao Chen advanced to half-sage? Among everyone, only Juanxi, who was on another peak, looked up at Xiao Chen thoughtfully. A strange light flashed in his eyes. The extreme Yin sect elder looked coldly at Xiao Chen and said expressionlessly, "When the bell rings, life and death will be decided by heaven. The duel will begin immediately." After saying that, he floated away from the mountain peak without saying anything else. Bai Wuxue wore robes of alternating blue and white. His handsome face was cold, showing neither joy nor sorrow. When he saw Xiao Chen rushing over, his expression did not change at all. "I haven't seen you for a year, and you've advanced to the half-saint realm. Not bad. Unfortunately, I didn't stop. If I admit defeat now, I can let you live. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't be able to stop later. Bai Wuxue said indifferently as he looked straight at Xiao Chen. He had absolute confidence in his strength. Xiao Chen's pupils constricted. He smiled faintly and said, "Is that so? In that case, I'll return those words to you. I'm afraid I won't be able to stop myself." Bai Wuxue did not get angry. Instead, he smiled. Snowflakes drifted down from the sky for no reason. Soon, a thick layer of snow covered the ground. Holy icy palm imprint. Bai Wuxue took a step forward and threw a palm strike. A huge icy palm appeared out of nowhere and smashed towards Xiao Chen. Compared to the great icy palm imprint of the past, this holy icy palm imprint seemed more spiritual. It seemed to merge with the world. Xiao Chen looked up. Amid the snowflakes, he could even vaguely see an ancient sage sitting in the air. This palm strike came from that sage and not from Bai Wuxue. This is the extreme Yin sect's superior grade heaven-ranked martial technique. No one has succeeded in practicing it for several hundred years already. It has an extremely high comprehension ability. It looks like this Bai Wuxue does not intend to waste time with Xiao Chen. The moment he makes his move, he wants to kill him. It's over. Bai Wuxue is too direct. There is nothing to see in this battle. The moment this palm strike was sent out, it elicited startled cries. Unexpectedly, Bai Wuxue had even succeeded in practicing this move. Shui Lingling and the true inheritors of the Supreme Sky Sect, who were on the profound Sun Bird, could not help but show nervous expressions. Interesting. However, that should not be all you are capable of. Xiao Chen looked around and made up his mind. His figure flashed as he quickly dodged. The ice palm imprint, which was circulating with holy light, directly cracked the arena with a bang, and the entire mountain top was shaking. The might of the holy icy palm imprint was very impressive. Boom! 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 The palm was like a mountain as it pressed down on the dodging Xiao Chen. The entire mountain started shaking intensely. The arena crumbled into countless shards, filling the air. The moment it started, the battle spread across the entire mountaintop. The cultivators watching from afar had great foresight. Before that huge palm, Xiao Chen seemed very insignificant. As he dodged continuously, it was a shocking sight. Every time, he would be nearly suppressed. After dodging a few times, Xiao Chen found an opportunity. He pushed off the ground and nimbly dodged the holy icy palm imprints. Then, he soared into the air and charged at Bai Wuxue. Such an ingenious and nimble movement technique attracted many praises. However, Bai Wuxue smiled coldly and quickly formed hand seals. His lips curled up in a mocking smile as he said, "I was just waiting for you. Die." Suddenly, two incomparably huge icy palm imprints appeared in the air. Then, Bai Wuxue pressed his hands together, looking like two mountain peaks about to merge together. In an instant, they trapped Xiao Chen. This sudden scene caused many people's expressions to change greatly. Xiao Chen, who was trapped between the two palms, looked very insignificant. There was no chance for him to dodge. If Xiao Chen got caught between the palms, he would not have a chance to survive. Unexpectedly, Bai Wuxue still had such a trump card. Just as everyone's hearts leaped to their throats, a majestic and resonant sagely song suddenly rang out. A golden light descended from the sky. The resonant sagely song recounted the legend of Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen's past deeds materialized into golden scrolls flickering in the sky. As the sagely song rang out, the gears of time spun. The legend turned into an epic of vicissitudes, then into a glorious myth. Many people had an illusion. Looking at the picture scroll that flashed between heaven and earth, it was as if they were looking at ancient history and imprints. They felt a sense of worship. Bang! Xiao Chen punched to the sides and infused the legendary energy into his fists. Before everyone's shocked gazes, the two holy ice palm imprints shattered into ice shards that filled the air. The ice shards reflected the light of the sun, giving off a multicolored light that formed a dreamy scene. In this scene, Xiao Chen's white robes gave off the feeling of a celestial being in heaven. You are not the only one who knows a superior grade heaven-ranked martial technique. Xiao Chen smiled coldly to himself. Then, a clump of electric light burst out from under his feet as he instantly executed Thunder Dragon steps. Xiao Chen's figure flickered, and he sent out a radiance of deities. The situation instantly reversed. Xiao Chen, who had been fleeing all over the place, actually turned from defense to offense. Bai Wushue's face sank. Clearly, he had not expected Xiao Chen to break his holy ice palm imprint so easily. When Bai Wushue saw that majestic, resplendent pillar of light, he stomped on the ground. Rumble. Suddenly, a 3-kilometer-tall snowy mountain rose behind him. A white-robed sage sat at the peak of the snowy mountain. In that instant, this place firmly stabilized. Bai Wushue did not move his feet at all as he directly threw a palm strike at the incoming pillar of light. The sage at the peak of the snowy mountain opened his eyes and sent out a palm strike at the same time as Bai Wushue's palm strike. It seemed like the two's movements overlapped. When the sage made his move, ancient sagely music resounded in the sky, sounding very distant. Instantly, snowflakes fell from the sky, drifting even faster. There were even several snow tornadoes spinning wildly in the distant sky. Such a mysterious phenomenon was truly horrifying. The cultivators watching from a kilometer away could not help but move back another 5 kilometers. The overwhelming might was as immovable as a mountain. Bai Wushue firmly caught this majestic, resplendent light with his palm. His feet did not move at all. He even froze that light into ice, shattering it piece by piece. I have obtained the inheritance of the ancient snow race. No matter how strong you are just a joke before me. When Bai Wushue saw the light turn into ice shards, he could not help but smile cockily when he easily dealt with his startlingly mighty move. So what if you can shatter my cold ice hand imprint? You will still be defeated. However, before Bai Wushue's smile froze, Xiao Chen had already arrived before him. Xiao Chen did not feel dispirited at having his deity's light imprint dissolved. All Xiao Chen wanted was to get close to Bai Wushue. Clearly, he had already achieved his goal. Myriad Heaven Divine Fist, tenfold combat prowess, deities descending. A beam of divine light tore through the barrier of the sky and entered Xiao Chen's body, causing his aura to soar. Everything in the world seemed to want to prostrate in worship. Before this aura, the snowflakes falling from the sky suddenly froze. It was like time stopped. Xiao Chen roared ferociously, and a golden light spread out. His white robes fluttered, and his long hair gave off beams of light as he punched. Bai Wushue, who had received this move head-on, had not expected Xiao Chen to suddenly bring out tenfold his combat prowess. The snowy mountain behind him started to crumble in an instant. The sage who was sitting at the peak of the mountain was blown to pieces. Break! The 3-kilometer-tall snowy mountain crumbled, and Bai Wushue's momentum broke. He went flying back like an arrow. In the blink of an eye, he flew back 1 kilometer and landed outside the platform at the summit. The snowflakes stopped dancing, and the strong wind stopped howling. Xiao Chen stood calmly on the summit, looking coldly at Bai Wushue, who was filled with shock and incredulity. The surroundings were quiet. The situation on the battlefield changed in an instant. Just a few moves had already made everyone's heart surge with excitement. No one had expected such a result. Unexpectedly, that white-robed brat knocked Bai Wushue into the air. Chapter 785. In the distance, Shiman Bao's pupils constricted slightly. Shock appeared in his eyes as he said softly, "What exactly did this fellow experience in the past year? To think that he managed to gain the upper hand." However, Feng Xingxing frowned slightly. He whispered, "This fellow has only practiced this fist technique for 1 year. In that case, I am too disappointed. No matter how ferocious this fist technique was, it was still unorthodox to a bladesman. Furthermore, he could not defeat Bai Wushue with just this fist technique." Bai Wushue hovered in the air, and his expression turned grave. As he looked at Xiao Chen, he no longer looked down on him like he did at the beginning. After not seeing him for a year, it looks like not only did I have a fortuitous encounter, but you are also extraordinary. However, just based on this, you will still lose. Bai Wushue's face sank as he turned into a beam of cold light. Everywhere he passed, he left behind a crystalline beam of light in the air, giving off a cold light. Suddenly, the figure of that sage appeared once again. Beams of cold light flowed in the air, giving off a boundless might. The cold light flashed, and heavy snow fell from the sky once more. Bai Wuxue instantly arrived before Xiao Chen and sent out a palm strike. Bai Wuxue did not believe that Xiao Chen could continue using his tenfold combat prowess. In terms of close combat, Bai Wuxue definitely held the advantage. Bai Wuxue guessed the beginning correctly but not the end. Indeed, deities descending could not be used continuously. However, in close combat, that was not Bai Wushue's advantage. The two of them quickly started fighting. Loud explosions rang out as the lightning and the cold chi clashed, resulting in terrifying shockwaves. Soon, the shock waves from the two's battle flattened the entire mountain by about 30 centimeters. Lightning flickered amid the snowflakes, creating a wondrous scene. In an instant, the two exchanged 100 moves. As they attacked, they did not give way to each other. They did not take half a step back, giving the other a chance to gain an advantage. Xiao Chen's thunder steps and Bai Wushue's mysterious cold light movement technique were brought out to their limits in the air. Those with weaker eyesight wouldn't even be able to see the afterimages of the two of them. If it weren't for the terrifying phenomenon in the air and the loud bangs that pierced straight into people's hearts, no one would think that there was some kind of earth-shattering battle going on here. Dance of snow, 100 flowers bloom. The snow turned into flowers. Thousands of pure and holy ice flowers spun gently, containing boundless killing intent. They formed a beautiful storm that swept towards Xiao Chen. Energy ignited, green cloud burns the sky. Xiao Chen was not afraid at all. He directly burned half of his vital qi, and the blue sky seemed to be burning. A true dragon rolled in the sky, and a dragon claw descended from the sky. The 10,000 flowers shattered into countless ice shards that shot out in all directions. Dance of snow, 100 flowers blooming. After Bai Wushue's first move was broken, he immediately used his second move. Hundreds of flowers, roses, peonies, azaleas, parasol trees, and laurels, bloomed. They formed the 100 flowers grand array, containing a world of its own, intending to trap Xiao Chen to death. Xiao Chen's face darkened, and he did not hesitate to execute the Kuanpeng fist. A massive shadow descended, and the aura of the ancient Kuanpeng spread out. The rock hated the sky for being too low when it spread its wings. After the 100 flowers grand array broke, Xiao Chen broke it with one punch. Then, he continued fighting with Bai Wuxue. Such a soul-stirring battle forced the spectators to retreat another 3 kilometers. Their expressions were strange. Originally, everyone thought that this battle would end quickly. They did not expect it to be so intense. Everyone thought that Xiao Chen would definitely lose. However, not only did he come, he even managed to push Bai Wuxue to such a state. Bai Wuxue broke every move he made. He did not seem to be at a disadvantage at all. After exchanging another 100 moves, they were still evenly matched. However, Xiao Chen lost his patience. He knocked Bai Wuxue back with a punch and immediately retreated. Then, he looked at Bai Wuxue coldly. If that is all you have, then I think you are only a so-so. With a flip of his hand, the slender lunar shadow saber appeared in Xiao Chen's palm. When the saber appeared, the crowd exclaimed softly. They suddenly realized that Xiao Chen was also a bladesman. The eyes of the top bladesman of the south, Feng Xingsheng, and Wang Meng, the bladesman of the 7 giants, immediately lit up as they quickly looked over. When Bai Wuxue saw Xiao Chen take out the lunar shadow saber, his expression remained calm. He still had a trump card that he had not used yet. He believed that as long as he threw out that trump card, no matter how strong Xiao Chen was, he would not be able to change the result. From the very start, Xiaoqin was destined to lose. Boom! Xiaoqin drew the lunar shadow saber, and a bolt of lightning immediately tore through the sky. Boundless thunderclouds churned continuously. Soon, the thick, dark clouds stretched for 50 kilometers, looking very horrifying. The instant the electric light flickered, Xiaoqin ingeniously used the Qing Emperor's drawing the saber in the starting stance of the lightning tribulation saber technique. Bai Wushue's expression changed slightly. He suddenly discovered that he could not make out the trajectory of this ordinary saber strike. He did not know where Xiaoqin would come from. So. Bai Wushue could not help but reveal a horrified expression as he quickly retreated. However, it was already too late. A purple light flickered, and a saber light tore through the protective quintessence on Bai Wushue's chest. Then, it landed heavily on the inner vest he wore. Thunder roared, and boundless electricity exploded on the saber. Bai Wushue's body was blasted back like a cannonball. How can this be? How did he execute this saber strike? It was very stunning. The cultivators who used the saber all cried out in surprise. Even Feng Xingsheng, Wang Meng, and the other two became somewhat excited. Their gazes were very complicated. After not seeing you for a year, your saber techniques did not disappoint, Feng Xingsheng muttered to himself. The look of pity in his eyes intensified. He said, if Bai Wushue had not comprehended a will, you might have been able to win this battle. The other people who knew about Bai Wushue also revealed looks of pity in their eyes. After Xiaoqin executed the lunar shadow saber, he gained the upper hand in one strike. The brand new lightning tribulation saber technique forced Bai Wushue to retreat. Bolts of electricity formed berserk pythons around him. Bai Wushue roared ferociously. That horrifying might caused Bai Wushue's aura to plummet to rock bottom, unable to rise again. His earlier disdain and calmness vanished. He was now in a sorry state. The 100 electric pythons merged into one and released motes of golden light. Then, together with Xiaoqian's lightning tribulation, they turned into saber lights sweeping at Bai Wushue. Bai Wushue clenched his teeth and held on. The sage sitting on his head sent out a palm strike, and a snow mountain appeared in front of Bai Wushue. Bai Wushue leaped up gently, and his body merged with that sage image. He appeared very dignified as he sat on the peak of the mountain. The lightning tribulation descended, and electricity split apart. That snow mountain mysterious phenomenon started to shake continuously, looking like it would crumble at any moment. Bai Wushue, who merged with the sage image, had a calm expression on his face. His gaze turned cold as he suddenly stood up. In that instant, the sky seemed to have risen significantly. Bai Wushue's aura, which had fallen to rock bottom, soared back into the sky. The dark clouds above him resisted for a while before being torn apart by his aura. Under the sunlight, Bai Wushue stood at the peak of the snow mountain. He looked very beautiful, like a god of ice and snow. Crystalline halos flowed out from under his feet. The teetering snow mountain became firm in an instant. A rebounding force shot out and directly blasted the thick lightning python away. Let's end it here. Bai Wushue snorted coldly and looked up. The cultivators who met his gaze immediately felt an indelible chill appear in their sea of consciousness. The mysterious phenomenon of the snow mountain collapsing and the boundless storm lingered in their minds. It's a will. The will of ice. Bai Wushue really comprehended the will of ice. No wonder he can kill martial sages. For people with a will, fighting above their cultivation realm is as easy as eating or drinking. The fear they felt on a mental level made the surrounding cultivators all cry out in alarm. There had long been rumors that Bai Wushue comprehended the will of ice. However, rumors were just rumors. Now that they saw it for themselves, they were all greatly startled. Shimen Bao could not help but reveal a sinister smile. He said, in the end, this fellow still managed to force Bai Wushue to use the will of ice. Unfortunately, I cannot kill him personally. What a pity. Feng Xingsheng and the others sighed and shook their heads. Once the will of ice was used, no matter how big of an advantage one had, it would all vanish. Even if Shao Qin did not lose, he would not be able to escape death. Shui Lingling, who was on the profound sun bird, had a terrifyingly calm expression. At some point in time, the purple bough had appeared in her right hand. She clenched it so tightly that it seemed like she would break it. Only Jiuanxi, who was on the other peak, did not show any changes in his expression. From the moment Shao Qin executed the lightning tribulation saber technique, he had confirmed some of his guesses. No matter how talented you are, or how great your luck is, challenging me, by wuxue, is fated to be your misfortune. Die. A murderous intent flashed in Bai Wushue's eyes. Illuminated by the light, Bai Wushue stretched out his hand and pointed. A white light surged out from his forehead, and the light of his will formed white rings of light visible to the naked eye. Bai Wushue's forehead lit up, and a small ice sword with a flowing light shot out from his finger towards Shao Qin. This was the form of Bai Wushue's will. The small ice sword was only about the size of a palm. However, the energy it spat out made space tremble continuously, as if it would tear at any moment. A huge pressure encased Shao Qin. A flood of ice and snow seemed to form behind the small ice sword, rumbling like 1,000 horses galloping forward. Several people could not bear to watch this, so they closed their eyes. Another unparalleled genius was about to fall. The age of the martial epoch was the best stage for geniuses, but it was also the grave for countless geniuses. When Shao Qin saw the small ice sword approach him, he smiled instead. He said softly, "I thought you had some trump card." "So, it is this. It seems like I have a little bit of a will as well." The purple lightning talisman in Shao Qian's sea of consciousness spun around and flew out from his forehead. The huge pressure instantly vanished before the immortal will of thunder. Chapter 786. Without giving the crowd any time to be shocked, the talisman crashed into that ice sword. A melodious shattering sound rang out. The thing that Bai Wushue's will took shape shattered in half. A purple light flashed. At the summit of the snowy mountain, Bai Wushue vomited a mouthful of blood. Before he could express the shock in his eyes, the purple lightning talisman struck him. Electric light burst out, and the light of an immortal will poured out. The 3-kilometer-tall snowy mountain directly melted. Shock waves surged, and Bai Wushue's body flew back 5 kilometers before crashing heavily into the cliff of a mountain. With a loud bang, the mountain peak was immediately split into two. The huge mountain peak collapsed heavily towards the ground. Shao Qin flew over, and the talisman automatically returned to his sea of consciousness. Then, he swung his saber, and a saber chi tore through the sky like a crescent moon, directly chopping the falling mountain in half. Shao Qin gently drifted over and landed beside Bai Wushue, who was covered in wounds and coughing up blood. He was in an extremely sorry state. Shao Qin sheathed his saber. Then, before everyone's shocked gazes, he kicked out and sent Shao Qin tumbling down from the middle of the mountain like a sandbag. When the crowd saw Bai Wushue being casually kicked away by Shao Qin like a cripple, they thought about how Bai Wushue had said that whoever challenged him was unlucky. They could not help but find it ironic. Who exactly was unlucky? As the crowd watched Bai Wushue fall, the answer went without saying. The extreme Yin sect elder who announced the start of the duel earlier looked at Shao Qin with an extremely cold expression. Then, he gently drifted over and caught the severely injured Bai Wushue. When this elder saw Bai Wushue's body covered in wounds and charred skin, his face twitched uncontrollably. Unexpectedly, the top true inheritor of the extreme Yin sect ended up like this. Without a month of rest, he would not be able to recover. Damn it! The elder's face darkened, and a murderous intent flickered in his eyes. As he looked at Shao Qin, who was halfway up the mountain, the heavenly sage laws behind him could not help but move. A tremendous amount of spiritual energy flowed like a river and rapidly gathered towards him. Buzz! Just as he was about to make his move, a wisp of fiery light streaked across the sky like a meteor, leaving a beautiful trail in the sky. In the blink of an eye, it fell towards him like a falling star. It was so fast that it could not be described with words. The old man was startled and quickly withdrew his killing chi. Then, he hugged Bai Wuxue and pushed off, his figure flashing into the air. As soon as he took a step forward, the stream of light descended and instantly sank into the ground. A finger-sized hole appeared in the ground. It was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. Boom, boom, boom. Without any warning, after a second of peace, countless spider-like cracks suddenly appeared on the ground, and the entire ground exploded. Rocks filled the sky and shot out in all directions like sharp arrows. A deep, spiral-shaped crater with a diameter of 500 meters appeared. The power of this arrow was incomparably shocking. What is the extreme Yin sect trying to do? Are they not going to admit their loss? The rules of the challenging peak are set by the Bushin Palace. The disciples of the various sects are free to challenge others. Life and death are up to heaven. Grudges are settled fairly. The elders of the sect are not allowed to make a move. Just as the old man was about to lose his temper, a clear and elegant voice rang out. Shui Lingling appeared above him on the profound sun bird. She held up her purple bow and pointed it at him expressionlessly. The surrounding cultivators could not help but show interested expressions. Was this extreme Yin sect planning to go against the world and challenge the rules set by the Bushin Palace? Girl from the Haotian sect, don't be too overbearing. Naturally, the extreme Yin sect will not do something so dishonorable. The extreme Yin sect can afford to lose, and so can Bai Wuxue. A loud and clear voice approached from afar. It was a skinny old man walking over with a gloomy expression. When the cultivators in the distance saw this person's face, they could not help but take a few steps back. A deep fear flashed in their eyes. The extreme Yin old man actually came out. That is normal. Bai Wuxue is the disciple he is most proud of. How could he not come out after being injured to such an extent? However, Shaoqin is really surprising. The extreme Yin old man was an expert of the Tianwu domain, second only to Emperor Wu. In this era where Emperor Wu was fighting in the starry heavens, he represented the peak of the Kunlun realm. When facing this person, just a glance from him would cause one to feel immense pressure. Shui Lingling suppressed the panic in her heart and said, "Many thanks for Senior's magnanimity. Shaoqin, let's return to the Haotian sect." Halfway up the mountain, Shaoqin gently leaped up and landed on the back of the profound sun bird. He discovered that there were many familiar faces on the bird's back. Aside from Jun Si and the others, Yu Chenxi and Gong Yangyu were among them as well. Shaoqin looked at their identity medallions. After not seeing them for a year, they had already become true inheritors. It looked like gold would shine wherever it was. Congratulations, senior brother Xiao. A few people offered their congratulations, and Shaoqin responded to them one by one. They were all familiar people, so he did not stand on ceremony. Shui Lingling looked cautiously at the extreme Yin old man and did not say anything. She controlled the profound sun bird to spread its wings and turn into a beam of azure light, flying far away. After all, this was the extreme Yin sect's territory. While the other party did not dare to play any tricks, there was no guarantee that they would not do something in secret. The earlier they left, the better. As they watched the group leave, the cultivators who had rushed over to join in the fun all had complicated expressions on their faces. Originally, they thought that there would be nothing to see in this battle. Unexpectedly, it turned out to be so intense. The process was filled with twists and turns, extremely dangerous. The final result was also unexpected. Bai Wuxue had brought out the will of ice and launched a great counterattack. Originally, he should have won. Who could have imagined that Shaoqin would comprehend a will as well? Furthermore, that will of thunder was much stronger than Bai Wuxue's will of ice. The moment it came into contact, it shattered Bai Wuxue's will of ice. If the will of thunder was damaged, it would harm the cultivator's foundation. Bai Wuxue's injuries might even affect his cultivation. This was a severe loss. Of the 7 giants, Bai Wuxue was the first to comprehend a will after Enjuanshi. His future should have been bright. Bai Wuxue had used this arranged battle with Shao Chen to use Shao Chen as a stepping stone, reaching the sky in one step and rising rapidly. Who could have imagined that the result would be the opposite? Bai Wuxue became Shao Chen's stepping stone, becoming famous instead. After today, the name of the white-robed bladesman, Shao Chen, would shake the entire Tianwu domain. He would appear before the eyes of all the major factions, and his fame would catch up to the newly advanced Holy Sun, and Juanxi. The crowd slowly dispersed. Soon, the extraordinarily bustling Challenge Peak also slowly dispersed. The old man hugging Bai Wuxue said with a sullen expression, "First Elder, we are really not satisfied with letting that brat leave just like that." Many figures landed at the foot of the Challenge Peak. All of their auras were terrifyingly strong. Unexpectedly, all of them were superior-grade martial sages. They were all major characters of the extreme Yin sect. Any one of them could sweep across the 27 northern provinces. At this moment, these strong martial sages all focused their gazes on the extreme Yin old man. With just a word from him, these people could instantly catch up to Shao Chen. They would immediately kill Shao Chen like he was an ant. They would absolutely not let him leave alive. The extreme Yin old man glanced at the weakened Bai Wuxue. His emaciated face looked terrifying. He slowly said, "There is no need. That girl, Shui Lingling, definitely has a will clone of the Haotian emperor on her. Even if all of you go, you will not be able to stop her. However, Wuxue is so severely injured. How is he going to participate in the sage ranking 1 month from now? Our extreme Yin sect is counting on him to get a spot." Indeed. If the 2 supreme elders in closed-door cultivation know that we messed up this matter, they will definitely hold us accountable. The big shots of the extreme Yin sect behind him all chimed in one after another. They were clearly unwilling to accept this outcome. Ignorant. The extreme Yin old man's face sank as he snorted coldly. When the others felt his rage, they all shut up. "Even if we kill that brat, will Wuxue definitely get a spot?" "You don't have to worry about the spot. The will of thunder has a suppressive effect on the will of ice in the first place. It is a good thing that Wuxue is injured. Without destruction, there can be no construction. This matter will make him calm down. Without destruction, there can be no construction." The old man hugging Bai Wuxue thought of something. His expression changed, and he said, "First Elder, are you saying," the extreme Yin old man said indifferently, "coincidentally, Wushue's will of ice shattered. While it is being reconstructed, I will think of a way to add an attribute into it." When the others heard this, their eyes could not help but light up. If they could add an attribute into the will of ice, such as light, massacre, ruin, darkness, or destruction, then Bai Wuxue would definitely benefit from this disaster. This was definitely a blessing in disguise for Bai Wuxue. His strength would increase explosively, and his chances of obtaining a slot would increase significantly. However, if one does not comprehend an attribute on their own, forcefully adding it in would be like drinking poison to quench their thirst. It would be a huge obstacle to Wushue's future growth, an elder said somewhat worriedly. The extreme Yin old man smiled mysteriously and said, "I have my own ways. Just wait and see. What does one arranged battle count for? The most important thing is who has the last laugh." The azure profound sun bird pierced through the clouds in the gorgeous sky and a gentle breeze. Shao Chen stood on the profound sun bird and casually chatted with his junior brothers and sisters from the Haotian sect about their experiences in the past year. From the time they set out from the Haotian sect to the time they entered the savage forest, 1 year seemed very long. However, to Shao Chen, it felt like it was just a thought. This feeling became even more intense when he told others about it. It gave him a comprehension of the great Tao, of how time flies. There would be many more years like this on the path to the peak. Be it bitter cultivation or searching for fortuitous encounters, 100 years might be but a flick of a finger. After the profound sun bird flew for 2 days, it stopped in a provincial city with a transportation formation. Then, Shui Lingling spent a large sum of money to transport the group to the Haotian province. The familiar silhouette of the Haotian city appeared in Xiao Chen's vision once again. The group bade each other farewell, and Xiao Chen prepared to return to his residence to rest. Junior brother Xiao Chen, wait for a moment. Shui Lingling, who had not spoken along the way, smiled gently and called out to Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen turned around and looked at the other party. He said, "First senior sister, you are looking for me." At such a close distance, Xiao Chen did not dare to look at Shui Lingling directly. This gentle girl had an indescribable charm. Shui Lingling nodded and said, "Wait for a moment. I'll bring you to a place. The first elder of the inner sect wants to meet you." As long as the sect masters of the various sects had the same cultivation as Emperor Wu, they would travel the starry heavens and adventure in the depths of the universe, searching for fortuitous encounters that belonged to them.